Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Saturday, the 24th of August, 2019. Welcome in. Let's make sure everybody can see and hear me okay before we go too far here. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing today once I know that we're broadcasting okay. So in the meantime, welcome in everybody in the chat, the early joiners here, my friends in blue, welcome in. Thanks you guys for joining me. And yeah, I just want to make sure that the audio and the video are in sync, and then I will continue on to explain why I'm doing this video on a Saturday. Steve Burnett has contributed $5. He says, thanks to your channel, viewing on a new build. Thank you. Well, thank you. Okay, everybody says we're synced and good. All right, so here's the deal. I'm a one-man shop, and that means that I have to coordinate everything from customer consultations and helping order parts for new builds or upgrades, as well as handling any repair calls that come in. You never know when that's going to happen. On top of doing the YouTube channel and trying to coordinate, even getting new business and how I go about that. So everything gets to be a little overwhelming at times. Now, this machine behind me belongs to one of my professional customers. It's an office where I build all the computers in the office. And this computer started having problems where they would leave over the weekend, and when they came back in, Windows would not boot. It would just go to a blank screen. And it's some Windows update that's causing it. And the way Windows Updates is currently working with Microsoft, it's very difficult to try and determine which update's causing it. Now, the machine was built back in July of 2015. And rather than hunt down which update's causing it and why it's happening, keeping in mind that all the machines in the office are the same and they all have the same software, so what makes this machine different? Probably the user made some change. I don't know. But we weigh the option of how much time will it take to diagnose it and repair it versus how old is it? Maybe it's just time for an upgrade. When we do the upgrade, we'll do a nice clean install of Windows 10. We'll have to reset up the printers and the email and the favorites and do all that same thing, reattach it to the server and all that fun stuff. And then the customer will have to rearrange their desktop icons the way they had them. But then it's a guaranteed set amount of time that's going to resolve that problem indefinitely. So today, what I've got to do, well, basically, last night I picked this machine up because it has to be picked up after hours on the last day of the week, which Friday, right? And while they enjoy their weekend, I work over the weekend and get this thing back Sunday night. So Monday morning when they come back in the office, this computer's right back where it was. It looks exactly the same as it always has on the outside, but the inside will be all new. Their desktop will look a little different, and they'll have to rearrange that. It's like buying a new car. Going to have to rearrange the seat and the mirrors. I don't want to carry anything over since I don't know what's causing the blank screen to occur. So the last thing I want to do is move everything over. Apart from any files, desktop icons I can move over, everything will be reinstalled fresh and clean. And so that's the idea today. Now, with this system, it works perfectly fine. In fact, a reinstall of Windows 10 on this system will also fix this problem. But because there's so much labor and time involved in that, why not just go ahead and upgrade it, since this machine's over 4 years old now, and that's a great time in an office to replace your machines, anywhere from 3 years and beyond. And ideally, it's great if the employee is going on vacation for a few days and I can do it during regular business hours. But this is a service that I offer my clients. And so because I am very limited in my time that I have to do this over a weekend, that means everything else gets pushed aside so I can get this done really quickly and get it delivered. And then I'm sure I will get a call on Monday about something not working, something's missing, and then I can connect in remotely and handle it. So I fully expect that to be part of this entire process. So with that, welcome in. We got about 450 people joining us right now. And thank you guys so much for joining me on this Saturday. Jan Giddings has contributed £4.99. Thank you, Jan. Thank you for supporting the channel, as well as Peter Dunstall also contributing £5. Thank you, guys. And excuse me, I'm having a little, I need to have the elixir of life. Now, because I'm under such a time crunch, I won't be interacting with the chat as often. I will, I just won't spend too much time doing it as I have this last week, because I literally have 4 hours to get this done. So we need to get moving. So we're going to start, of course, by removing the side panel here. There's one. Wow, I put those in tight. Okay, so little dusty in there, a little bit dusty. I have to blow all that out, I think. But I'll tell you what. I think what I'm going to do instead, because I'm live on video, if I was not live on video, I would probably take it outside and get the leaf blower on it. But I've got a damp wash rag here. I'm just going to wipe down some of this, which very dusty. Again, it is Phoenix, so this is par for the course here. This is normal. It's not a dirty office or anything like that. It's just what happens when you live in the desert. Now you'll see, there's actually a video of me building this, I'm sure, somewhere on the channel back around July of 2015. And this computer has needed no repair. Everything's exactly as it was built 4 years ago. That goes to the quality of the components that I'm selecting. I did note that the customer is still using a PS2 style keyboard and a VGA monitor. In fact, their monitor doesn't even have HDMI. It's only got DVI or VGA. So I need to check that on this board and be prepared when I deliver the machine that I'll be able to hook it up, because they're clear on the other side of town. And if something as simple as a little adapter prevents me from plugging it in, it's a long drive to go back and forth. And as I said, it has to be ready Monday morning. So no pressure. I don't need to worry about dusting off the motherboard because that's coming out. Basically, what we're going to do on this upgrade is very simple. If you built your own computer, then it's very easy for you to upgrade it because you've used all industry standard parts. Now, Dells and HPs, for the most part, you can't do what we're about to do. Sometimes you can, but if you build it yourself, you can always do this. The bottom line is, we've got a solid state drive here that's coming out. This motherboard, RAM, CPU, cooler, that all comes out. What we're going to do is we're going to put a new motherboard, CPU, and RAM in there with an NVMe drive. That's it. That's all we have to do. The power supply is good. We'll keep the DVD drive and we'll keep the memory card reader up front. And then we power it up, install Windows 10, get all the updates, make sure we're activated. It goes back to the customer. Once it's back to the customer, then we have to configure printers, network access. Yeah. But in the meantime, if there's anything that I've forgotten or missed, I will always be able to take that motherboard with that drive and boot it right up on a test bench temporarily to get anything I need off of it. If the customer says something's missing, or if I want to, look and see what printers are installed now, so when I deliver it, go back and reinstall those same printers and see which one's default, just to avoid that support call, I can refer back to this machine by just booting it up, like I say, on a test bench. So it's a super easy upgrade, but it's also a major upgrade. Major. So I think, I can't remember, this is what motherboard do we have in here? This is a Gigabyte H97 board. So yeah, it's 4 years old. Sorry, I want to rinse my wash rag off here because I think I'll be using it some more. Probably when I take that motherboard off, I'm gonna again use use same damp washcloth to wipe down the case behind the board, and then we'll let that dry before we put the new board in. It shouldn't be dripping wet or anything, but it'll be damp, and I want to make sure it's completely dry before I put the new board in. And yeah, we'll probably have to take this back panel off too. So let me go ahead and take the back panel off right now. Oh, I was looking to see what board that was. I had to get my glasses. So that's a Gigabyte. Come on, Carey. Get with the program. H97M HD3. Gigabyte H97M HD3. And I think it's 8 or 16 gigs of RAM. Probably 8 back then. But what we can do, as for getting started, there's no particular place we have to start, but if I can zoom you in here a little bit, you can get a closer look at what I'm about to do. Let's see if I can lower this camera down just a little bit for you. Hang in there for a second. It's a tight squeeze to get in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. Maybe just a little bit higher. Right about there, I think is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect everything down across the bottom of the board. I'm not worried about where these things go. They all go back in the same place on the new board. And that's all pretty much standardized. This is the rear fan that's plugged in. Because there's no discrete graphics card on here, I don't plug in either of the two fans that are up front. Neither of those are plugged in. This is a slightly different case. This is a Leon Lee all aluminum case. I know it looks a lot like the 200R, but it's all metal. And then we've got our SATA cables for the drives and power cable here. So again, all of this has to come off. And then we've got the CPU power right here. Now there's no cable management ability on this case. This case is probably 10 years old or older, and that wasn't a very common option. So that's why it's all bundled up right here in the front. But this power supply is more than adequate to cover this new hardware that we're putting in, so we don't have to change that. We can leave power hooked up to the DVD drive, and I can take the solid state drive out. This is a nice drive too. This is a Samsung, I think it's a 500 gig or 240. Oh, we got 2 screws holding it in. Okay, forgot that I did that with these. If I can get it the angle I need to get in there. Times like that, I got to use the manual screwdriver to get in there to take that drive out of there, which I have somewhere in my, there we go, that's how to do it. So all I need to do is take this screw out right here. That's it. That's the drive. I'm not exactly sure what, let's take a look here. I'm just going to take the drive out of this adapter so I can see what's in there. That bit's too big, not going to work. So we'll just go this way. Do it the old-fashioned way. Last one right here. Okay, so this is what? This is a Samsung 850 EVO, 250 gig drive. Nothing is wrong with it. Remember I told you I've never seen a failed SSD. I end up replacing them and upgrading them long before they ever fail. And in this case, we're going to go to a 512 gig NVMe drive, which is going to be 5 times faster than that. I've got some dust on this little adapter here, so I'm going to just wipe that down with that damp washcloth while I've got it out. Even though it may be a while before I ever need an adapter like that, but you might see this reused on one of the veteran giveaway machines in the future. It's typically the only time I need to use them is on older machines, or older cases rather. So, well, I've got you zoomed in real tight here, and the reason I did that is so you can watch a bit closer on the removal of the components, which is pretty darn quick. We've already got all the cables disconnected here. So the only thing holding this motherboard in are just a few screws. And I want to put these screws separately because I'm going to need to put some screws back there when I put the new board in. I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to take this one out. Okay, and the reason I left that one is because as soon as I take the last screw out, no matter where the last screw is, the motherboard's going to flop out of there. So I want to make sure that I'm not, having to get in this weird position and catch the board. So if I come down here, and also normally I would do this with the case laying flat, but I've got it upright so you guys can watch. So if you're going to do this at home, I would suggest you lay the computer flat. And then you don't have to do what I'm doing right now, which is to catch the board. And we'll take that out, and here's the motherboard in all of its glory. And then, of course, we need the I/O shield out of there, and we keep the board and the I/O shield together. This will be reused in something, maybe another veteran giveaway. I don't know yet. It belongs to the customer, so I have to talk to them and figure out if they want it. Normally, this customer just says, please do me a favor and get rid of it, because we don't have anything to do with it and we don't know what to do with it. But I never assume. I will check with the customer on that. And with the board out, I'm going to just wipe down this motherboard tray because it's probably dusty. And this is the time to do it. How often do you have this opportunity? We need to pay particular attention to where these standoffs are, because I've got the standoffs in the standard positions here and here, but not necessarily on this side. So something I'm going to have to watch for when I put the new board in. Because we definitely don't want a standoff back behind the board where there's no mounting hole or it can short out. But you can see the amount of time that takes is relatively quick. Just a few minutes, and if I wasn't talking to you and making a video, it would have been done even faster. Now, I'm not really concerned with how long it takes somebody. It's how quick or how slow you are is no measure of how good you are. So I suggest you guys, when you're doing your own builds or repairs or upgrades, you take your time, enjoy the whole process. When you're working for a living where your people are paying you to get a job done and you're under the stress of time, that's a different story entirely. But while you're just enjoying yourself with regards to working on your own machine at home, take it easy, relax. If you start getting frustrated or you feel this rush because you're, I can't wait to get these parts on, not a good way to do a build with quality. Focus on what you're doing right now. Don't worry about what you're going to do when you're done, which is to turn it on, test it, and use it. So stay in the moment. Keep your focus and your attention. And if you do that, you'll be far less likely to make any stupid mistakes. Okay, so this is our cabling and everything, the way it's set up. and the case is ready for the new board to be installed, but we have to prep the board first. So let me just move this out of the way temporarily, and let's get the board up on this table. We'll just set this down here. It'll be fine. So for the new board, we're going to go with a Gigabyte H370. This is the HD3. I've used this board a lot in the past. And let's go ahead and take that out of here. More SATA cables. Here's the board. We've got some filling material there. Instructions. New I/O shield that's going to go with that board. And I will just set that in there for now. And you know what? We'll just build on the board. How about that? We'll get the board ready on top of the motherboard box. So I thought this was HDMI only. So that means, oh no, it's got VGA. This motherboard has, I needed to pay attention to that because of this monitor they're using. This motherboard has VGA, DVI, and HDMI out when using the built-in graphics on the Intel CPU. So that's perfect. Also, we still have the PS2 port right here for their PS2 style keyboard. So that's, this is the kind of stuff people, let me rephrase. These are the kind of lessons I have learned the hard way, right? Where you don't pay attention to that stuff. You build or upgrade the machine, you go to deliver it and find out their keyboard won't work or their monitor won't work because they haven't replaced them in 10 years. You know, that's older equipment. And especially with a keyboard, people get attached to their keyboards. And then of course the styles change. They don't make that style anymore or that specific brand or color or feel. They never want to give it up. And then of course one day it just doesn't work anymore. And you get the phone call. Where can I get another keyboard? And of course you can use any keyboard on your computer. As long as you have the right connector. So if you have a PS2 keyboard, any PS2 keyboard will work. If you have a USB, then obviously any USB keyboard of any design from any manufacturer purchased anywhere in the world will work on your computer. So it's really not a question I can help somebody with regards to what keyboard should I buy. I always recommend you buy what's comfortable to you. So the CPU we're going to use is the 8700K, and of course we're going to cool it with the Mugen 5. But first, I think I want to put the M.2 drive in. And for the M.2, we're using a 970 Pro. So this customer, you know, they do a ton of work, and this employee that works there is second in charge from the boss. So we need to make sure that they have something very, very powerful that leads everybody by example. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to install the 970 Pro. Let's see if I can get you zoomed in here once again, get you a better look at what's going on. Hang in there for a minute as I make some adjustments. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to do my best here to give you guys a view. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work without a cameraman, but we'll do our best. This motherboard has two places for M.2 drives to go. We can place one either here or here. It is my preference on this particular build that I'm going to use this area. This is the traditional area we typically use. Because no GPU is going to be used, I don't have to worry about avoiding that. And again, it keeps this bottom slot available for an easy upgrade in the future if the customer needs more storage. Now, for this build, I'm not worried about more storage because they have a server, and I want to discourage empty hard drive space. Because if the customer has it, they'll probably use it. I want them to fill their drive up very quickly to get them conditioned to learn to save all of their work files on the server. These individual workstations are not backed up. or that we back them up like once a year. So if they're saving files to their desktop or their My Documents folder, they're not getting backed up. And that's against company policy. Company policy is you put all your work-related work and files onto the server, and the server is backed up regularly. But people sometimes don't listen. So what happens is we put small capacity drives in, and then they start running out of space. And I get the phone call. What am I supposed to do? I'm getting notice I'm running low on space. And I go, well, why would you be running low on space unless you're saving things to your hard drive that you're not supposed to be doing, because we don't back that up? That means you're going to lose all your work if something happens. Do you want to lose all your work? No. Well, I need you to make a new habit and take all that stuff that's filling up your hard drive and move it over to the server and stop saving stuff on your hard drive. I don't need to have this conversation with every employee, only the employees who aren't following procedure. How do I know which employees those are? When I get the phone call that my hard drive is getting filled. So the smaller the drive, the better when we're talking about a work environment. All right, so let's get that little screwdriver back out so I can get this M.2 drive installed, which is very simple. Just take that one screw out right there. You'll see I always use a magnetic tipped screwdriver so we don't drop the screw. And then I've got to get the box open. This is brand new. Everything you're seeing here is being unboxed for the first time. There's no rehearsals. There's no practice on my live videos. I just don't have time to create the amount of content I'm creating when editing and rehearsals take 3 times longer than just getting it done. So, all right, so let's get this out of here. There's our drive. That's going to go with the label facing up. Only goes in one direction. Put that right into the socket. Lower it down over the standoff and put that single screw back in to secure it. Do not over tighten the screw. Just pretty much turn it till it stops. That's it. You're done. Inside of this box, the way Samsung does their instructions, you have to sort of open it up this way. And inside you'll find your documentation, which can go in the motherboard box. And the rest of that is just to the recycler. All right. So that's our 512 gig NVMe storage right there. And then, of course, we've got RAM and the CPU to install. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. Am I? Yeah. I think what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and put the CPU in right now, which I have right here. And again, this is the Core i7-8700K. Everything, again, I want to emphasize, everything is sealed from the factory. First time I'm opening this up. The reason I do this is I'm trying to keep everything as real as possible. So if I run into strange things inside the box or strange issues with installing, this gives you a more realistic, genuine, and authentic idea of what you can expect if you've never done it before, what some of the unexpected things are. In other YouTube channels, they have, this perfect lighting and cameramen and editors, and they can rehearse and they can shoot things over and over and over again until it's ideal. When you build a computer, and especially when you do it the first time, there may be some things that are less than ideal. And what I'm trying to do is emphasize to you that you can overcome that very easily. It's not a make or break moment. It just means that you have to respond to it accordingly, be a critical thinker and understand that things don't always go as planned, but that doesn't mean the whole project is scrapped or that you necessarily did anything wrong or failed. You just move along accordingly. If there's an object in the road, you drive around it. You don't just stop the car, get out and walk. So that's all I'm trying to emphasize here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the CPU out. Now this is a K version of a CPU, which means it does not have a cooler, which is fine because the stock i7 coolers are too loud anyway, especially in an office environment. We've got our documentation, and on the back there's our Go Faster sticker. That'll go in the motherboard box. And then in this box, Here's our $400 CPU right there. And I'm just going to take this out. I'm going to hold it by the edges. Watch the way I hold the chip. Hold it by the edges. I'm not touching the top. I'm not touching the bottom. Here we've got our CPU socket. And I'm just going to open that CPU socket up. Place the CPU. There's a little golden triangle down in this corner and down in that corner. I'm going to align those. See, that's not good, Carey. There it is. Now it's in there. Notice I'm not putting any downward pressure on it. I'm gently gliding it and hovering it over. There's a little ridge along all four sides. This only fits in one direction. There's little notches cut out in it as well. Once I've assured myself that it's sitting above those pins, this lid is going to come down and crush it down on top by this little fork right here where my finger is. It's going to go underneath that screw on the board. And then this little plastic protective cover that's protecting all those delicate pins that are under the CPU, that's going to pop up all on its own. And this lever is going to have a lot more resistance on it now, because before there was nothing in there, it was loose. Now I'm going to have to use a little bit of force. I'm going to have to hold the board down with one hand. So notice where I'm placing my hands. And I'm going to push this down and lock it in. And that secures it into position. I do want to double check it because it did felt a little tighter than normal, and I just want to make sure I am in that socket correctly. And for that, I'm just going to get my glasses out and verify. And yes, it is in the socket absolutely correctly. Very good. Now, I've learned in the past that sometimes adding the heatsink, which is what I like to do at this stage, interferes with my ability to get to this little connector right up in the corner here. That's the CPU power connector right up in here. And so with this big heatsink sitting right here, it blocks my path to that. I get it done, but it's not easy. So I think I'm going to do things a little bit differently today, and we're going to put this board in just like it is. And then we'll do the heatsink, and then we'll do the RAM last. I don't want the RAM in place until after the heatsink is on, because I don't want the heatsink to bump into the RAM and possibly jostle it in its socket as I'm trying to get it seated. So let's go back to the wider camera view here. Let's see. We'll go back a little bit more. That'll work. I don't need this for a while. This can move over here. And then there's 4 little screws that go with that. I'm going to keep all that together because if I reuse that or this, I'm going to want those little parts. So for now, I'm going to just get them out of my way because they're not parts that I need for the rest of this build, but they are parts I may need if I ever want to reuse those parts. Okay. A couple of contributions have come in while I've been working here. Let me give a quick couple of shouts out to the contributors. And let's see, what did I miss? Michael Dane has contributed $5. He says, hey, great videos. Have a Coke on a Dane. Right on, Michael. Thank you. Gary Tatum has contributed $10, and he says, I'm glad I finally caught you live. I've been repairing computers for years, and I love your videos. Stephen Sheik has contributed $5. He says, keep the videos coming, Carey. I always learn something. Thank you. Andrew Johnson has contributed £1, and that catches me up on all the contributions. Thanks, you guys. We have a little over 1,000 people watching live right now. Let me take this opportunity to let you know that I will be attending Techcon Unplugged in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You're all invited. This is a con for MSPs, managed service providers, or people who are techs or want to be self-employed techs. And there you can learn all about marketing, different services you can offer, the importance of contracts, managing customer expectations, detailing scope of work when it comes to your customers, you know, what they think you're going to do and what you think you're going to do. why you just can't work on a handshake these days. Now you really need contracts to protect yourself. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to techconunplugged.com. It's at the Holiday Inn, Grand Rapids, Michigan, September 20th through the 22nd. $199 is your ticket for all the panels, everything for those 3 days. All the food is covered, and there's a Saturday night social at Dave & Buster's where you will also be fed and given tokens as part of your $199 ticket fee. So it's a great deal. It should be a pretty small event. I can't imagine there'll be much over 100 people there. And that's because it's really intended for specialists, people such as maybe yourself that are working as a self-employed computer tech and you're looking to grow your business, or maybe you're working part-time and you're wondering how you can go full-time. Or maybe you haven't started part-time yet and you're looking for that, I don't know, that little some motivation or some inspiration to get you to start doing the work and what kind of work you want to do. So there's plenty of work out there to be had. Being a PC tech it's not a dead career. It's far from it. And right now, companies are having a hard time finding people that want to work. There's plenty of people that want the money. There's plenty of people that apply for a job, and then when you hire them, they don't show up, or they can't pass the drug test, or whatever other foolishness. So there's never been a better time to be a PC technician. It's quite the opposite of what others would have you believe. So if it's something you've considered, or if it's something you're doing now and you're not happy with your growth or progress, I can't emphasize how important this event is, because there's no other event like it that I'm aware of. It's really by techs and for techs. What ends up happening is you get these large corporations that do contractual work, and they will do everything they can to discourage you. You're in their way. But in a way, they're in your way too. And so many of the conventions are designed for these big corporations. Obviously, there's more money in it. So like I said, this is not a big budget operation. It's the first of what I hope is an annual event. And it's being put on by the folks over at Podnuts. That includes Jeff Hallish, Marvin B., Paco LeBron, John Dubinsky. These are all great folks. I've known all of these guys for years, and I look forward to seeing them. And that's the other great thing, is you get to make friends, birds of a feather. You get to meet people just like you who share your interests. And I think you'll get as much from the panels and the help offered as you will from just the regular socializing. Even if you consider yourself not very social, it's so natural when you're in your own element surrounded by others like you. It just feels like home. So we hope that you'll be able to attend, and if not, there'll be other events in the future, so it's fine. Fred Stewart's just contributed $10. He says, have a Coke on me, Carey. Well, thank you, Fred. I think I will. Christoph Esch has contributed €5. No dogs, no cookies. All the best from Germany. Thank you, Christoph. And Thomas Beckenstow has contributed $10. James Hook has got a good idea. He says, maybe you should mount the heatsink bracket before inserting the motherboard into the case. That is a great idea. And yes, I absolutely have to do that. If I were to put the motherboard into the case right now, it would be impossible, I think, for me to put the bracket on, because this motherboard tray doesn't have a cutout in the back of it, because it's an older case. Thank you for mentioning that. I wonder how long it would have taken me to figure that out on my own. So you see, even with all my experience, I still make stupid mistakes. I was ready to put that board in there, and I'm sure I would have done it just fine. And it's just 6 screws and it'll come out real easy, but it's just something like that can discourage you. It's very simple stuff, and don't let yourself be discouraged on your build. If you do feel discouraged, that means it's time to take a break. Go watch some TV, relax a little bit. It's not that important. And wait till you feel psyched up again, like you're ready to go at it. And then it usually goes much, much smoother when you sort of go with the flow of your energy. Don't force something to happen when you're dealing with delicate electronics that are expensive and important to you. Don't force it. Enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, stop. Take a little break. It'll wait forever. It's very patient. It will wait for you. Okay, so with that, Techcon Unplugged, the link, I think the link is in the video notes below this video. All the parts that I'm using, the new parts, are all listed in the video notes. Also, below this video in the video notes. Tom Hagen says, greetings from Sweden. Well, welcome in, Tom. Good to see you. And Ray reminds me I have to put the I/O shield in before I can put the board in. Well, that'll become very obvious. that much I can tell you. When I go to put the board in, if there's no I/O shield, I'll stop immediately because I have to line it up with the I/O shield. But it would be possible for me to get the board installed, then go to install the heatsink and realize I can't put the backplate on. On most modern cases, you still can because they'll have a big cutout in the motherboard tray. As I mentioned, this case is older. It does not have that cutout. And so that backplate has to go on now. So let's just do that. So Mugen 5 has gone up to like $62. I don't know why. It was at $48 for a long while. So I don't know if it's just a different supplier and the regular supplier, which I think was Mugen themselves. I don't know, maybe they ran out of inventory. It's weird. At least that was the prices on Newegg. It's still at 60, whatever it is, $62. It's still a bargain as far as I'm concerned. So here we've got the box with all of our parts for the cooler. You know what? Let me just move some of this stuff because that's all going to go. I'll put it over here. That'll go in the motherboard box. That's the stuff the customer gets. Scythe includes this awesome Phillips number 2 magnetized quality screwdriver, which you can use for all kinds of projects well after your computer build is done. And it can be used to even build your entire computer minus the little tiny screws like on the M.2, because then you need a Phillips number 1 for that. But everything else. So if you're building a new machine with a Mugen 5, you just use this. Open the Mugen 5 first to take the screwdriver out is what I'm saying, because that's the screwdriver you want to use. We've got our documentation. This is the box that had all the stuff in it. And then as we look through our parts, that was weak. Mediocre. We've got our thermal compound. We're going to need 2 of the fan hangers. And then 2 of them are for an additional fan you can add optionally, which we are not going to do. We will not need that. I've never had to do that. And then we've got a couple of brackets here. These brackets that look like parentheses, these are for AMD chips, so we're not using those. This is the backplate we were talking about. This is what's got to go on right now. And in this bag, this is for more fans and AMD stuff. So we won't be using anything in this bag. So all of that right here will go into a Ziploc bag for spare parts. In case I don't know, maybe the customer wants to go to AMD someday and we want to keep the CPU, heatsink, and fan. Probably not. But you never know. You never know. Now in this bag, we're going to use these. There's 2 types of standoffs. There's a big standoff and there's a short standoff. Now these shorter standoffs, these are used on those X299 and X99 Intel systems. So we're not using these either. Because this cooler will fit on numerous AMD and Intel chips, they give you all these different adapters and screw types to fit whatever it is you're building. Because we're building just a standard a socket 1151 Intel chip, these are the only parts we need to do that. So what I need to do first and foremost is get this backplate installed, and then the rest of this we'll do after the motherboard is installed. So I'm just going to put that here, put that there. I've got the 4 standoffs, and I've got the backplate. Now I've detailed this install at least a dozen times, so I'm not going to go and repeat myself again and again and again. If this is the first video you've seen of mine and you want to learn how to install the Mugen 5 cooler with close-up shots and full explanations of why things are rotated in certain directions, please know that in my video library I have several videos, including a review of the Mugen 5 specifically, that details its full installation process with, like I say, close-ups and explanations. But to keep things moving along here today, instead of repeating what I have done, and I've done it numerous times, say enough is enough. So all I'm doing is getting these screws started. And I want to make sure on the back of the board I'm coming, whoops, that I'm coming through the center hole there, which I am, and you'll see I always do opposite corners. And notice the way that I'm holding the motherboard. You notice I'm not touching any of the components on the board above it or below it. The underside here, you can see my fingers are on the metal back plate. I'm not touching any of those soldering points down below. They're sharp and they hurt if you touch them. And not only that, it's an easy way to dissipate static electricity, which we don't want to do either. I don't know what I was thinking. I always go opposite corners, but one fell out and it ruined my process. But it just goes to show you that there's no one right way to do this. This is just the way I do it. We're going to take that included screwdriver and we can go ahead and tighten these standoffs down. Now I'm going to set the board down to do this because it's just too difficult to do upright. And you want to tighten down opposite corners on the back plate because you don't want any warpage to occur. You want it completely flat, just like a car tire. When you put a car tire on, you always do the opposite lug nut because you don't want the tire, or the wheel rather, to bend from too much pressure on one side. So I'm just going to go around this numerous times until I feel like there's equal resistance. Sometimes when you tighten up one side, another side loosens. So what was once tight a minute ago is no longer. So that's why I keep going back around and just double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking. I want that tight. If you over tighten any screws that go through your motherboard, you can crush the circuitry on the motherboard. So try to avoid that. Now I've got the back plate installed right here. And, you know, I can also put the brackets on it. So these brackets, they're going to go on facing each other. One goes over the lever that you've lifted up. And I can use my electric screwdriver to just tighten these down real quick. There's one. Just double check and make sure those are, yeah, those are going to be perfect. These you don't really have to worry about how tight they are, because once they're secured down, the heatsink's going to create pressure between this point and the top of the CPU. So that is about all we can do at this point. So the last thing we'll have to do would be to put the thermal compound on, put the CPU heatsink on, and put the two screws in, and that simplifies this process immensely as far as, you know, being able to access this 8-pin CPU power connector once we've got this installed in the case. And let's see, contribution just came in from Peter C. with 100 Swedish krona. Great show as usual, Carey. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for supporting the channel. Welcome in, everybody. If you're just joining us, we've got 1,062 people watching right now. Bill Hegblini, is that what it says? Has contributed $4. He says, I'm sorry I'm late. Here's my tardy donation. Well, that's okay. We're just glad you're here. And thank you for supporting the channel. The board is ready to install. So I'm going to go ahead and move it over to the side, and we're going to get the case back up here. And you remember all these parts here for the cooler that I said we're not going to use? I'm going to put all those parts into a little Ziploc bag to keep them all together, because otherwise it's too difficult for the customer to know, if they were to tackle this on their own, which screws go to the cooler and which ones go to everything else. So we'll keep all the documentation and everything for the cooler in here. I've got other videos that detail out the install process and show you the documentation. After you've done it about 40, 50,000 times, shouldn't really need to look at the documentation anymore. But if you're a first timer or you're a little rusty, no pride is lost looking at documentation. And the Mugen 5 documentation is very, very clear. It's good documentation, which is rare in this industry. All right, let's get the case back up on the table here. So one of the things I know right away, right out of the gate, is this board is significantly bigger. It's longer. So these standoffs, these two bottom standoffs, are going to have to get moved to the lower positions. Even though this case is old, the ATX standard is still followed today as it was back then. And in this drawer somewhere, I have a ratchet. Well, that's ratchet. There it is. This is a 5mm socket on this ratchet. And lost my live feed here, guys. I want to see what you can see. There I am. We're going to put it on the loosen mode. And I'm going to take this screw out, or this standoff rather. Take that out. And I want to follow the line, right? There's a standoff here, here, and that means the other one's got to go down here, way, way down at the bottom. But you'll see there's a couple. But if I put it over here, it doesn't line up anymore. It's got to be in a straight line. And just tighten that back down. Be careful not to over tighten your motherboard standoffs, because if you strip out the threads on the motherboard tray, I'm not exactly sure what you're supposed to do at that point, because then they'll just spin and spin, they'll never tighten. Same thing over here. I've got an extra standoff right up here, which is typical on a micro ATX board. We want to make sure that, you're saying, well, how do you know which one to remove? Well, these two are going to be in the line. Again, we make sure these three are in alignment, and then these two, wherever I end up putting it, will be in alignment. And the one on the top typically gets moved over just a little bit offset. We'll verify everything when we go to put the board in. So we're going to take this one out here. That's my little 5mm socket. Just put that back in there. And we're going to put that at the very bottom hole down here. Now that is the standard, like I said, ATX layout that I am adjusting these standoffs for. And the board it had in there was a micro ATX, which also followed the micro ATX standard with the placement of the standoffs. That's it. Now, if I did everything correctly, the board, the mounting holes for the board should line up perfectly. I do need to put that I/O shield in though, so let's take care of that. So one of the downsides of using an older case is you're not going to have USB 3.0 ports on top. This one has a little door up here where the ports are located, and they're all going to be USB 2. There's even an old FireWire port up there. Of course, nobody uses that anymore. But when I say nobody uses it, of course, I'm talking about the general population. There's always somebody out there going, I still use it. Good for you. Okay, so I need to get these cables out of the way, and I'm going to lay this case flat so I can see if I can get this motherboard to align with the standoffs we just put in. So bear with me for a minute because, again, if I had a camera operator, I could show you, but it's just too difficult to try and do this with the case upright. And this part is too delicate and expensive now with the CPU in it and the M.2 drive. Things get real expensive, and just want to make sure that I'm not jeopardizing the integrity of my build just so you can have a better view. Again, I do have other close-ups for people that are looking for a step-by-step tutorial that details every screw and every wire. That's not this video, but in my video library, you'll see several of those. All right, so now let me align the motherboard. This is a little more difficult to do without the heatsink on because I like to grab the heatsink and use it for this part of the build. So bear with me for a minute. I'll align that. And again, I'm holding the board by the edges. Or in this case, I can even use the bracket that holds the heatsink in. We just want to avoid touching any of the motherboard components. I want all these ports right here to align with their holes. And it generally means I have to tilt the board up and push it in and then lay it down straight. Let's see if that's going to work for me. Because when it's aligned right, should not have to struggle that hard. So if you're struggling with it, you can always take it back out and try again. I just felt it move forward, and it looks like everything's aligned. There are some grounding straps on this I/O shield, and I want to make sure that I didn't fold any of them down and block any of these ports. This is certainly the time to check for that. The next thing I want to do is look through all the mounting holes on the board to make sure that we have a standoff underneath every one of them. Again, this is a Gigabyte board that has that extra standoff, extra mounting hole rather, that I've yet to see a case support. Now you can ignore that. If you have an extra mounting hole and you have no place to put a standoff, that's okay. You can ignore it. What I'm going to do is I have these little plastic standoffs we used to use in the 90s on motherboards, and I don't use them anymore today. So this is a good way to get rid of them. And it's just going to be added support. It's completely optional. You don't have to do it. So this is what the little plastic standoff looks like. Back in the day, motherboards used to have a bunch of these, and then they'd be held in with 1 or 2 screws. These would slide in with a little nub. There'd be holes in the motherboard tray, and they would go in and slide down like the way a picture is held on the wall or something like that. So all I have to do is cut the nub off of it, and I end up with this little support stand. And that's going to go in that extra hole on the motherboard that I've yet to see a case support that hole. I don't know why it's there. It's only something Gigabyte does. So what I have to do to put this in, I take the board back out just for a moment. And what I'm going to show you is if you, the standard ATX layout, you'll see we have 2 holes across the top, 2 across the middle, 2 across the bottom. But for some reason, Gigabyte has added this 3rd hole, which again, I've never seen any case manufacturer, apart from Gigabyte themselves, support that. So I'm going to take this little standoff and I'm going to just lock it into position right here. And that just gives the board a little extra support. Again, not needed. It's fully optional. It's just an excuse for me to get rid of those little plastic standoffs. I can't bear to throw them away. So you say I could grab it right here by that heatsink handle, heatsink support. I want to avoid touching any of the components on the board. I'm going to hold the board by the edges any way I can. One of the reasons I like having the heatsink on it at this point is I can grab the heatsink and manipulate the board a lot easier. It's a bigger handhold. Because this is a pre-existing system, we have a lot of cabling in our way. So I want to just push all the cabling out of the way. And we're going to repeat just what I did, which is setting the board down. Gotta keep all the cables out of the way. And then I want to make sure that we get all this lined up correctly. And you can usually feel it when it lines up right. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, using those very same screws that I removed to take the board out, we're going to put those same screws right back in. The screws are often tied to the standoffs based on the case manufacturer. Some of them use a thicker thread, some of them use a finer thread. And I do have a clutch setting on this electric driver, so when the clutch hits 3, the driver shuts off. Do I have a screw in the wrong place? I might have a standoff rather in the wrong position. I want to double check my work here. Let's just take a quick look. So once again, this is why patience is required. So I'm going to take this board out for a third time. Now, technically I didn't have to take the board out to put the plastic standoff in, but you would have seen nothing. So there are some processes that I'm showing you that are sort of going around the hard way because I want you to see as much as I can show you. Yeah, I put the standoff in the wrong place. So we'll just set this here for a moment. This bottom standoff, I can see it now. I didn't see it when I did it. This bottom standoff right here needs to align with this standoff. And as you can see, when I raise my finger up, it's not aligning. So there's another hole right beside it. I've got to be in the next one over. So we'll just take that out real quick and move it over. Easy stuff, real easy stuff here, folks. Just pay attention. These are very common mistakes. I've been building machines for nearly 3 decades. Professionally, I've been paid to build computers since 1991. And even that, sometimes a little trickery there with the eyes. It also doesn't help if you're working on a case you've never seen before or you haven't seen it in years. Like these cases, I built a lot of machines with these cases back in the early 2000s. Don't really see them much anymore. Even a top-mounted power supply is pretty unusual these days. So I don't remember, you know. I could probably work on a 200R blindfolded, but wait 20 years, or in this case, 14 years, if I haven't seen one in 14 years, or I only see it on rare occasion. It's easy to forget things like that. So if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. All you're doing is verifying what you already know. And verifying what you already know is not a path to growth. All right, let's do this again. We're going to put this in for a third time. Now, this not only should not be something that discourages you, but rather something that makes you better, because the more you do it, the better you will get. Nothing replaces experience. And that experience can be building, having to take a motherboard in and out 3 times, or building 3 different systems. It's effectively very similar experience. If you just do it once, it's not really enough, you know? So look at it as an opportunity to gain more experience with regards to how the motherboard seats, because it is a skill, and it's something that, like any skill, you get better at the more you do it. And so if you have to take the board out for any reason, just think of it as a way of practicing installing the board so you could get better at it. A lot of this is just attitude, having the right attitude. Okay, now we should be lined up and I can get these motherboard screws installed. I want to avoid tightening any of the screws down, so I can shift the motherboard if I need to get it to align with the standoffs. What's critical is that you don't want to stand off back behind the board where there's no mounting hole, because you can't see it and it'll ground out against the back of your board, creating a short circuit and could fry the whole system. Something as simple as a little tiny standoff and you were in too big of a hurry and you weren't paying attention and you can't figure out why your system won't boot, and you can look at it all day long, you can look at your wiring, you can reseat everything, you reseat your RAM, double check your heatsink, double check your fan connectors, and when you pull the motherboard out, then the question is, can you see the extra standoff? How long does it take you to realize when you count the motherboard holes and count the standoffs, you've got one more standoff than you have a hole? And so that's what I recommend you do if you're a first-time builder or still a novice builder, or it's been a long time since you've built. I am missing one of my screws for the motherboard. Where did it go? That's not it, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. I know I took 6 out, so I gotta put 6 back in. How'd that happen? I can put this back up on its feet and you can see what it looks like right now. It's getting heavy. There we go. I need to find that other screw. Oh, here it is. It's right back here. And then that. So this is a good example of why I keep the screws loose. The mounting hole back there, well, if you can see it, it's not aligning with the standoff until I push it forward. So what I have to do, and I'm going to block the view here for a minute, is I have to push the board, I have to push it back this way. And while I'm pushing it, this table wants to spin. Hold on, I got to stop the table from spinning, because I don't have a third hand, despite what you might have read on the internet. What am I doing? We'll put that here, put that under there. Okay, good, good, good. I'm going to push this forward. And then I'm going to tighten all these screws down with the electric screwdriver. As I mentioned, there's a clutch. If you're a first-time builder, it's okay to take screws out with an electric screwdriver. Do not put them in with an electric screwdriver. If you're still a novice builder, it's an easy way to over-torque the screws. You can strip out the threads. You can cross-thread without realizing it, even with a clutch. There we go. So that's all 6 screws holding the motherboard into position. Then these cables are going to get hooked back up. These will get hooked back up. That 8-pin CPU power cable, we can plug that in right now, because that'll be much easier without that big heatsink in the way to just plug this in right up in this top corner. Much easier than the way I've been doing it. And then the big 24-pin power connector for the motherboard, we can put that on right now as well. Now, because this board is longer, I'm probably going to have to undo this cable management stuff I've got going on here, because I think these cables are going to run a little bit short. Hopefully, this is pretty much in the same position as the other board. Yep, that's locked in. This one we won't be using. That went to the solid state drive, so that'll get bundled up. I'm not worried about hooking up the DVD drive at this point. Now we're ready to put the heatsink in. I can plug the fan in. It can go into any fan header. This is for the rear case fan. And I just need to look and see where we have a header on here. Might need to grab a flashlight. Flashlight. Aziz, light. That's a nerdy reference for some of you who get it. Let's see. multipass. We have a fan header up here. Do I have anything closer? I want to run this cable to the nearest fan header. This board doesn't seem to have many. I've got one over here. CPU fan is there, so it looks like we're going to have to run it up. The cable's going to be a little short. Maybe I can just pull on it. Let's see. Once again, this will be a lot easier to do now than after we put the heatsink in place, because the heatsink is gonna, it's pretty large, and it'll block, you know, it'll make this area very narrow to get in here when there's this big heatsink right here. So I'm glad I took care of that. Right now, typically there's a fan header somewhere right in this corner, not corner, but right on this edge of the center of the board, but apparently not on this one. But that's fine, gets the job done, no problem. I'm not hooking up the two front fans because I'm not installing a discrete graphics card. There's no reason to have them. And in Phoenix, you're just bringing in more dust anyway and adding noise. Michael Martin has contributed £2. He says, great videos, Carey. Like to buy fish and chips. Right on. Can I buy fish and chips for £2? That sounds like a bargain. Thank you for supporting the channel. Rick Hubbard has contributed £3 and said, that board was designed just for your plastics. Sharon Idle has contributed £1. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Rick and Michael. Thanks, you guys. We've got 1,096 people watching live right now. Solo says in the chat room, your brain is still the best tool you have. It certainly has the potential to be the best tool you have. Having the right tools is not it's not the solution if you don't know the proper way to handle the tools. You've got to know how to use the tools for the tools to be as optimal and helpful as they can be. Now, I'm going to take just a little minute here because I need a drink. And if you have any questions for me at this point in the build process, this will be the time to ask. And you can see we've got all that done pretty much in under an hour, right? When you consider my saying hello and explaining when it came to actual work, there's less than an hour of work. Getting that old board out, getting the new board in, and then we just have to put the RAM, which is just plug, RAM is in, and then the heatsink. I'm going to do the heatsink first, then I'll do the RAM. And then we hook those cables back up, and we're ready to do our test fire. We can update the BIOS and install Windows 10, and I can make sure that I can have this machine ready to deliver back to the customer by tomorrow night, so that on Monday morning, when they come into the office, they can get to work. Well, they might have to work on reconfiguring the machine a little bit. I'll make sure I put remote access software on it, so I will expect that call on Monday, because I can't predict what the customers are going to say. I can't read their minds, and I can't. Customers would like very much if you could, but I'm certain this is going to resolve the bad update. Whatever the update is, I thought initially that it was a bad video driver, and I updated the Intel video driver because there was an updated one available. And it happened again. So we've postponed updates. These parts, customers had these parts for about 3 weeks. I've just been so busy. This is the first chance I had to get to it. And remember, I can only do this work on the weekend. I can't interrupt their productivity. It's just a benefit that I offer my customers that not many services will offer to do. You know, they want the weekend off too, just like you do. And if they want the weekend off and you're having the weekend off, that means it has to be done during business hours, which means you got an employee that ain't working. So that's important to me to be able to offer my customers alternative hours. And it also means that I don't get as interrupted by the customer asking me a bunch of questions, whether it's about their home computer or anything other dialogue that occurs while I'm working and they're distracting me. So it's interfering with their productivity and mine. And because I'm in Phoenix and it's so crowded and hot, I'd much prefer, if I have to drive across town, to do it outside of business hours where there's, you know, traffic is so bad. So if I can get out of the heat, wait till the sun goes down, traffic also lightens up. A 45-minute drive becomes a half an hour drive, and a stressful drive is a more relaxing one. I just need keys and an alarm code to get into the office. And of course, with that comes responsibilities. If I forget to lock the door or set the alarm and they get burglarized, guess who's to blame? So again, I just want to emphasize many of the differences involved in what you see on most YouTube tech channels and what it is to be a real tech and the accountability and liability and responsibilities that come with it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's why you get paid versus you paying money to work, right? When you work on your own stuff at home, you're paying to do it. When you work on somebody else's stuff, they're paying you and they expect you to do it right the first time, to not take too long. And you can hear my cow back there. All right. How much RAM are we putting in there? I think we're putting in 16 gigs of 3200 megahertz Corsair Vengeance DDR4. And for this customer, going to 32 would be a waste of money. There'd be there's a word I like to use. The amount of benefit that you receive when you go from 4 gigs to 8 gigs or 8 gigs to 16 is usually quite noticeable. But once you go above 16, most users don't see any difference other than what it cost. You know, they see the financial difference. So you reach a point of diminishing returns. And that's true of storage. It's true of processor. You could give somebody who just sits around sending emails, you can give them a Core i7, and they won't notice any difference between that and a Core i5 or maybe even a Core i3 because of how they use the machine. And so to recommend they spend that much more money for something that gives them no benefit is just a point of diminishing returns. So for this client, 16 gigs is plenty. They won't see any benefit to going to 32, and that's why. That's why we only put 16 in there. But 8 wouldn't be enough. They will definitely see a difference going from 8 to 16. Curtis Brown has contributed $1.99, and he says, "You've helped me open my mind." Right on, Curtis. That's what this is all about. When you see people come into the chat or into forums and they're like, you need to use this processor or this GPU, they're closed-minded people. They think there's only one size fits all. This is the best and there's no questioning it. Well, it may be the best for them and their needs. But if they immediately start recommending things without understanding your needs, and that includes how you're going to use the machine, not only today, but over time, that includes what your budget is. This idea that there's one good chip, this is the best gaming CPU, it's just not true. That is a false statement. And when you read or see statements, whether it's on YouTube or on the internet, where somebody says this is the best anything, they're closed-minded. Because they're defining what's important to them and what they value as your values. You and I probably don't share the same values. And although many of our values may overlap, you're going to have values I don't have, and I'm going to have values you don't have. And because of the variance in values from people that don't know each other, it's impossible to say what the best is for you. So therefore, anybody who says this is the best is closed-minded. If they say this is the best for me, different. Then they're acknowledging this is what I like. I don't know you. I don't know what you like. I don't know how much money you've got. I don't know how often you're going to plan on upgrading. So I can't tell you what's the best for you. I can't tell you what food you're going to like either. I can't tell you what you think is spicy. I don't know you. So watch for that on the internet, because there's this very close-minded concept of absolutes, that whatever is good for me is automatically good for you. And it's inconsiderate, it's rude, it's thoughtless, and it's often 100% wrong as it applies to you, and 100% right on behalf of the person who's speaking, because they truly believe it. Well, that doesn't help you, does it? So I just want you to keep that in mind. Do your own research. It's your money. If you're looking for some help in putting parts together, right? You want to build a computer, but you're not quite sure what parts to buy. We have a moderator here, Catherine Anna Hauserman, who's in the chat room right now. Her name is in blue. She will help you put a parts list together, and she will ask you all the questions. She won't tell you this is the best graphics card. She won't tell you that. She will tell you this is what I recommend for you. Once she understands what you plan on doing with the computer and how much money you've got to spend. There's very few people that do that accurately or do it at all. And it's probably worth about $100, and she does it for free. So if you're nice to her, which is pretty much all she asks for, just be nice, she'd be happy to put a parts list together for you. And you can reach her both here in the chat room during our live streams and on Facebook. And be patient with her, because these things take time, and she's helping a lot of people. And again, she does it because she likes doing it. So the parts list she puts together, I have inspected many of them. I give them a thumbs up. She recommends good quality parts, and I've had lots of great feedback from people saying, hey, I just want you to know I built my own computer from watching your videos, and Catherine put the parts list together for me. I bought all those parts, and everything works great. Where people make mistakes, especially first-time builders, is they will override the parts list. And they'll say, well, I don't want that RAM, I want this RAM. Well, you should have talked to Catherine about that. In other words, if she put on regular RAM and you want RGB RAM, don't go and order RGB RAM because it may not fit. So we've demonstrated that here in the past on live videos where we had fitment issues because the customer didn't obey the parts list. So if there's an issue with the parts list, go back to the person who recommended the parts list to you and ask them, hey, look, if I want to change this to a different style, what would you recommend? Or if you have an idea, say, will this work? And you will avoid the delays in your build when you find out something's got to give. If you get parts that aren't going to fit, you need a bigger case or you need to change those parts. Depends what's important to you. And it can lead down a path of, it just gets really messy. We say, okay, well, if you change out the RAM to RGB RAM, now the RAM's too tall for the heatsink to fit, so now we got to put a liquid cooler in, but we put the liquid cooler in, but now there's not enough space on the case for the radiator fit on the liquid cooler. Now we got to decide, okay, we just bought a liquid cooler, we have to return the heatsink, all because you changed out one little component for lights, or whatever the reason is, but in this example, now do we return the case? And returning a case, very cost prohibitive. The shipping on returning a case is ridiculously expensive. Then you got to decide, well, do I unwind and go back with the original parts list, put the original heatsink back on it with the original RAM and be done with this? Or am I going to stay the course and use the different RAM, stay with the liquid cooler since I bought it, and I'm just going to buy another case and I'll keep the old case for another build or sell it or something? You can see how that delays your build. Something that could have been done in a day is now taking weeks as you're shipping and waiting for parts to come in. And then when like in the example of the all-in-one cooler, you order it, it comes in. A few days later, you go to fit it, find out it doesn't fit. And all these dominoes fell because you made one unauthorized change. There's no point in asking somebody to do all that work for you only to ignore it. It's just a waste of everybody's time, and yours especially. Now that I've told you that, decide accordingly and accept your consequences, because you can't say you didn't know better. All right. We have a couple contributions come in. Fabricadigo has contributed $5. And Kathleen Burgess has contributed $10. Thank you, Kathleen. And to Fabricadigo, I'm not even sure how you say that name, but thank you for supporting the channel. But one of the worst things I think you can do when it comes to asking for a parts list is to go to some forum with users with fake names. Well, FlyGuy23 on Reddit said, well, where's FlyGuy23 when you need him to help you because his advice or her advice was wrong? What are you going to do? Who are you going to go to for help? I've had customers do that to me. I say, you want to solve this problem, go get this router. And they go to the local Fry's electronics store, and while they're in the aisle, some other customer or somebody says, you don't want that router, you want this one instead. I do? Oh yeah, it's way better. They bring it home, it doesn't work, they call me. They go, how come this doesn't work? I go, well, did you buy the router I told you to buy? No, the guy at the store told me that was junk and I should buy this one. I go, well, what guy at the store? What's his name? I don't know. I go, so you took somebody's advice you don't know, you ignored the advice from the person you do know, and now you're calling the person whose advice you didn't follow to ask them for more advice? Why do I want to give you any more advice? It's clear you don't listen. And then people get really upset, like, how dare you talk to me that way? Well, how dare you waste my time? If you don't value the information I'm offering you and you dismiss it that easily, find somebody else that you want to listen to, because you're wasting my time. It's offensive to me because I have so many customers waiting, right? So if they'd have just done what I told them to do, everything would have worked like I said it would have, and they wouldn't have needed to call me. They'd be back up and running, and I wouldn't be interrupted by the same customer with the same problem because they didn't listen the first time. And there are customers who think, no, I'm paying you to do, and I'm like, no, you haven't given me a credit card on this phone call. Give me your credit card right now, and I'm going to start billing you for the advice I give you, because all the advice I gave you was free. I'm trying to save you money. I'm helping you out. You dismissed that advice. So if you want me to move forward now, and you think I'm being rude to you, it's because you're not paying me anything. I don't owe you anything, and I'm being punished because I didn't charge you the first time. I didn't say, you know what, I'll come over to your place and I'll bring a router and I'll mark it up so I make a profit on it and I'll hook it up for you, when you could easily do it yourself and save the money. And this is the thank you I got, was you dismissed my advice. You bought something from off the advice of a complete stranger, and now you're calling me back for more free help to ask how to make it all work. And when you're running a business and you're not making money because you got these calls coming in from customers that create these kind of things, you have a choice as a business owner as to how you want to handle that. There are good customers and there are customers. Customers are a dime a dozen. Good customers are rare. And so for good customers, those are the customers who value you. I bend over backwards for them. And for the customers who I hear from once every 18 months, and when they call me, they're looking for free advice because they trust me and they figure, I gave you I gave you the benefit of working for me 18 months ago, so I can call you for free advice. It's something I encounter a lot on the residential side, a little bit on the business side, but mostly it's a residential thing. And if people think I'm being rude to them, it's because I feel they're being rude to me. If they think I'm being inconsiderate, you're being inconsiderate. And if it upsets them and they say, I'm never going to call you again, what did I lose? What did I lose? So good, please don't call me ever again. That'll make me so much happier, since I'm not making any money from you and you're distracting me from getting my job done for other paying customers that are waiting. Let those customers go. You don't want them. They're not good customers. So I can think of at least a dozen times over the last 20 years, customers have not listened to me, gone against my advice, took the advice of somebody they don't know, who, if I say, what's their name? They don't even know. So somebody gave you advice and you listen to them and you don't know who they are. All I'm saying is, if somebody gives you advice, make sure they give you their contact information, an email address, a phone number. So if you're at a store and somebody says, oh, you shouldn't buy that, you should buy this, whether it's an employee of the store or a customer, say, oh, really, I should buy that? If it doesn't work, can I call you or email you and you can help me to get it working? And if they say yes, you might want to take their advice. On the other hand, the number they give you may not be a real number, or the email address may not be a real email address. That's the risk you take. You get what you pay for. But it might be a genuinely nice person that's looking to help you. And if you run into a problem, you can call them. In most cases, I think when somebody offers you their advice, unsolicited, like you didn't ask them, they just see you walking around the store with this router and they're like, oh, you don't want that. Say, great. Before I take your advice, will you give me your name and number so I can call you if I have a problem? And if they look at you like you're crazy, then I must be crazy to take advice from somebody who won't stand behind it. And then they'll say, well, I was just trying to help. Okay, well, I don't want you removing my appendix either. Just because you're an enthusiast, I'm not having you cut me open. I'd rather leave that to a doctor that I pay. I'm not going to go get it done for free down the street. Maybe I'm funny that way, but I would treat my computer the same way. And my car, right? These are things I rely on. This is not a novelty for me. I need that computer to work. I need it to pay bills. I need it to communicate. This is not a place where you should be taking free advice from strangers. But if that stranger is running a business and you're paying that business money, you should have peace of mind that they're going to help you see it through until the project is finished. So that's why when Catherine Anna Hauserman here in the chat offers to build these parts lists for individuals and ask you all the right questions, and she does it for free, that's why I say that's crazy for her to do that for free. And she uses her real name, and she's easily accessible through Facebook and here on live. So if some component, not that this has ever happened, but if some component doesn't fit or doesn't work right, you can reach back out to her. She doesn't just become this mystery person that you've seen once and never see again. And that's usually what people pay for. It's usually not free. Okay, if you're interested in becoming a technician, you want to learn some of the frustrations. Listen to Podnuts, P-O-D-N-U-T-Z. There's Podnuts Pro and Podnuts Daily. Check those two out. They're free. They're audio only. You can also listen to the Computer Business Marketing Podcast from Matthew Rodella. Tech Vets with myself and Mike Smith, or Mike Tech Show, will get you an insight into what it is being in the trenches. If you're starting your own business or you have your own business, you want to take it to the next level, you want to talk to other computer business owners, check out technibble.com. It's a community that Bryce Whitty out in Australia has created. It's been around over 10 years, and they have everything from sample contracts and advice on services you can offer. It's all available to you. The contracts, it's all part of a computer business kit. It's like, I don't know, $100 or something, but it's got over 100 documents in it, from sample invoicing, sample contracts, all that stuff is in there. It's pretty generic, and you really want to go over it to make sure the local laws are being followed wherever you live, but at least you're not starting with a blank page. These are all resources that I wish I had when I was starting, but when I was starting, there really weren't computer repair businesses. It was all people, it was all hobbyists helping each other. And then when the internet came out, and then people slowly started adapting to the internet, adopting the internet, that's when you started running into your average Joe needing help. Because back in the day, you had DOS, and you had to understand a bit more about computers to do anything. You had to type in commands. There was no graphical user interface. There was no such thing as a mouse. So with the introduction of the graphical user interface, where you just see the picture and you click on it, combined with the internet, it enabled the everyday person who does not have a technical mindset to jump in and join in on that, to do everything they need to do to where we are today, from banking, scheduling, booking plane tickets, hotels, keeping in communication with family and friends. And then there was a need, obviously, that needed to be filled for people to help get these computers running, to fix them, plus all the viruses, ransomware, and everything else that happens with all the dangers online. These folks need help. And of course, the businesses rely on computers more now than ever before. And so being a technician is a very rewarding career that can pay you very well. It can often be thankless, but if you get your check, if you get paid, in most cases, consider that your thank you. Okay. Sid says he's been messing with computers almost as long. Well, let's not confuse messing with computers with being paid to work on computers. And there's a very important distinction there. If you're just a hobbyist and you tinker with computers, you hold no accountability, no liability, and no pressure. Nothing, there's no weight on your shoulders. When you're getting paid to work in an industry, you have to perform to a certain level or you're going to lose your job. And that means you have to be able to accomplish so much work in a day, and you've got to sustain that in order to get a raise or to move up in the company. So if you've been working in the industry for decades, I completely respect that. But if you've been tinkering or messing about for decades, so what? That I don't hold that a lot of weight to that, because the only way you evolve and grow exponentially is to solve problems that aren't yours. And that's what you get hired to do. And I advise anybody who wants to become a computer technician, don't start right away with your own business. Get a job somewhere as a computer technician so you understand the liabilities, the procedures, and the reasons why things are run differently in businesses. Get at least a year of professional experience under your belt. Preferably retail experience if you want to work with residential. Go be a tech at Geek Squad. Go be a tech at Office Max or Staples. Deal with the general public for 1 year, where you are paid for 1 year to deal with whatever walks in that door. And I'm talking about the people and the computers they bring in and the problems they have. After 1 year, minimum, you will be ready with regards to setting the expectations of what you're about to do when you go self-employed. If you go self-employed with having no professional experience, you are going to be, chances are, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to have a sustainable business. You will be unable to meet your customers' expectations or to provide your customers with the services that they need once it's beyond your limited scope. You may not realize how limited your scope is until you put yourself in an employment situation where you're a full-time technician, again, whether it's help desk support at a corporation or, as I mentioned, more preferably, a retail tech. Nothing is better than that. There's no school that's better than that, in my opinion. I just want to look, see if I missed any other questions. What is a fair hourly rate to charge? It depends where you live. People in New York City will need to charge more. People that have to travel toll roads will need to charge more for travel time. People who live in rural towns need to charge less. People who live in expensive areas such as San Francisco would need to charge more. Boston would need to charge more. Somebody who lives in Des Moines, Iowa would charge less. It all has to do with cost of living. It has to do with how many competitors you have. It has to do with how much are you worth. Sometimes you have to weigh the option of quantity versus price. So if you say, I'm going to charge twice as much money, but I'm only going to get a third of as many jobs, that's up to you to decide. I would rather charge people less and take on more work, because the more work I do, the more referrals I get and the more experience I get. Every job is another opportunity to learn, and I can't get enough of it. I love it. Even when I see problems that frustrate me and I can't figure them out, I will figure them out, and then I will be smarter because of it. And it gets to be a question of, when you shop for gasoline for your car. If you're driving a car and you're looking for gas, quite often gas stations blocks apart can have varying prices. And some gas stations will charge what you think is an offensive amount of money, and they'll say it's because they have better gas. Some people will agree with that. Some people won't believe it. And you shop where you want to shop, and you decide which tech do you want to be. Do you want to work less and potentially make the same amount or less? Or do you want to work more to gain that experience and encourage working more by charging a cheaper rate? That's something only you can decide. I have found an interesting, speaking of that, I found a very interesting psychology with regards to items that are free. It seems that when you give away something for free, it doesn't have any value. This is a very difficult concept for me to explain, and I'm going to do my best. Growing up, I knew some kids that were given brand new cars on their 16th birthday, and every single one of those kids wrecked those cars within the first year in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not permanently, totaled the car, but they did something stupid that caused damage to the car. Because my theory is the car had no value to them. It was free. They didn't sacrifice anything for it. Now me, I've not been so fortunate. I've had to work for and earn and save and sacrifice for my cars. So my Mustang that's 6 years old still looks like brand new today. I'm obsessed over it. I take good care of it because I worked hard. I've waited a long time to be able to afford a nice car like that. And so it has a great value to it. Hold on just a second. Wait for that. Because I work so hard for it, I'm not looking forward to having to do that again anytime soon. I want it to last as long as possible. When customers pay me for advice, they treasure it and they thank me for it. But when I give it away for free on the internet, there's plenty of people that want to say it's bad, it's wrong. They want to prove they're better than me. They get competitive and they don't see the value in what I've offered, and nor do they offer any similar value on their own. Nobody who criticizes my YouTube videos has ever had their own YouTube video. Never, not once. It's never happened in the history of YouTube that anybody said, your video sucks. And I go, okay, show me yours. Never once have they had one. Never. Like if I'm building a computer. That being said, I predict because of this, much of the free stuff over time is going to go away because of the abuse that occurs. And once people start paying for things, they stop abusing the things they're paying for. Most people. So there's a weird psychology that when you charge for something, it's worth more. What makes perfume or cologne worth so much money? I never understood that. What makes certain brands like Bulgari, Coach, Gucci, what makes them so desirable apart from that name? Are their products really that superior? And you think of the amount of money that a bottle of cologne costs, whatever it is, Paco Rabanne, whatever it is. Why is that so much money? How much do you think that costs to make? And because they charge so much money for it, it has value. And not everybody can have it. And if not everybody can have it, that gives it more value. That's why you'll never see Ferrari sell a $30,000 car. It's never going to happen. All right. All right, let me get back to this. Let me just see what package was left at my door here. Bear with me for a second. No package, just the wind. Just the wind. Anyway, getting back to work. Oh, wait a minute, just missed a contribution. Adam Sleeth has contributed 20 Australian dollars. He says, nice choice of parts, looks like a good value. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really good value, and it's going to be a quiet, reliable computer that'll be fast. Mostly they're going to be doing, things like QuickBooks and Word and Excel on this. And it's going to fly through that. They'll have a bunch of tabs open in the browser as they do for this job that they do. And this computer won't be playing any games. They might play some music through Spotify or something, to listen to while they work. So they'll have numerous applications open at the same time. And so adding more RAM for that is ideal. All right, so anyway, where was I? We've got power hooked up to the board. We've got the rear fan hooked up. I guess now I can hook up these front port umbilicals here. So we've got the power switch, reset switch. All these go on most motherboards in the exact same direction, in the same order. And I have other videos where there are really tight close-up shots, which you can refer to if, again, you're just joining us for the first time here. I end up repeating myself a bunch of times because of that. So to avoid repeating myself again, I'm just going to plug these in and just let you know that for close-ups of this stuff, there are other videos available. Now we've got one of these USB 2 headers goes to the front port on this case for the 2 USB ports on the front of the case. The next one goes to the card reader. So these will go right here. It's the only place they can fit. And then this cable right over here, this is for front port audio. That's for the headphone and microphone jack up front. And it looks like all the cable management's perfect. It aligns perfectly. See, when you take your time and you think about the future when you're building, and you give yourself just a little bit of slack, if you think, wow, maybe one day I'm going to want to change the board, like what I do when I build, then when this day comes, and it will come, you won't have to undo any of your cable management, or you'll have to undo very little of it. You won't have to undo all of it, I guess is what I'm saying. And I got lucky here. I mean, I couldn't have predicted I was going to use this board back in 2015 when I did the cable management. It just worked out that way. Now, when it comes to installing the heatsink, I'm going to have to lay the case flat, and I'm sorry you guys aren't going to be able to see it, but again, I want to remind you that when it comes to this Mugen 5, I've got several videos showing all the detail of the installation and how I apply the thermal compound, and I just want to get it done, so we're just going to lay this flat and do it. So, start with the thermal compound, and we'll put some of that here. What I do is just do a little finger painting here with the thermal compound with a nitrile glove, not a rubber glove, not a vinyl glove, but a nitrile glove. And I get one as thin as I can get it so I can feel through the glove. And I'm going to finger paint that thermal compound to cover the entire surface of the CPU so I can't see through it. I might not have put enough on there. Let me see. I like to put a little, I'd rather have just a little bit more than a little too little, if it's me, if it's my choice. Looks like I might be okay. Takes care of that. I can take the glove off. There's still more thermal compound in this tube, so that if we ever need to reapply it in the future, there's probably enough for 3 applications in there, or 1 big thread ripper. But this heatsink won't fit on a thread ripper anyway, so that's a non-issue. And then in the box, we're going to remove the big old heatsink here. And if you want to buy all that marketing nonsense from the big guys that make heatsinks, the big popular ones you know by name, you're spending extra money for that. You buy a name that's not so well known, that doesn't have the big marketing budget, you might just find out not only does it cost half as much, it works just as good. It is easier to install. And that's the case that I have found, in my opinion, in my experience, with the Scythe cooler. Now the Scythe cooler, most coolers have a piece of plastic on the bottom of them to keep them free of any dirt or debris or dust, fingerprints, oils from your skin. And you leave that on until you're ready to install, but don't install with it on or it'll impact its ability to cool. Now that we've removed that protective cover, we want to make sure we don't touch it. And I'm going to set the cooler down. It only goes in one direction. And again, I want to remind you that this is all covered in other videos in detail. I'm using the included screwdriver to tighten the 2 screws of the heatsink onto that support bracket. And I alternate tightening one side and then the other so that we have a nice, even amount of pressure across the bottom of the heatsink and the top of the internal heat spreader of the CPU. And when these screws stop turning, that's when you know when to stop. They won't keep going. In other words, some screws you can sit there and keep torquing on them and torquing on them and torquing on them until something breaks. The way Scythe did this cooler, the screws come to a dead stop. And when they come to a dead stop, it doesn't matter how hard you turn it, that screw's not budging. And I like that a lot because there's no uncertainty of, did I tighten it too much? Did I not tighten it enough? That should be required, as far as I'm concerned, from all cooler manufacturers. Unfortunately, they all don't do it that way. But that's all there was to installing the cooler. You can see now why I waited to put the cooler on, because for me to reach into this corner now would be, it can be done. It's difficult. So by plugging in this cable and this cable first, they were much easier, much less stress, much less effort. There's no real right or wrong way to the order in which you want to build your computer, but I need to sort of create a new habit. When I'm using the Scythe cooler, that's the way I need to do it. And again, given that there was no cutout in the back of this motherboard tray, having to put that back plate on first is very important, which I nearly forgot about. Then we can get the fan on here, which means using those wire hangers and placing them on the fan, as I've talked about before. Where you see that turning right there, that center, that's the side that sucks air in. This side here, when the fan turns, you see the center doesn't turn. That's the side air comes out. That's the way every fan ever made is. Even the fan, you might have a box fan in your room, you know, keeping you cool in the summertime. It works the same way. That's how fans work. So, well, yes, some fans will have arrow indicators that indicate the direction of the fan and the direction of the airflow. You should be able to look at it without needing that training wheels and know just by looking at it if it's installed right. So where you see these support brackets, the air is coming out. And so when I put this fan on, this rear fan is blowing air in this direction. So I want this fan to also keep that air flowing in that same direction. And that's how we have efficient airflow. By adding more fans, the reason it can cause your computer to run hotter by adding more fans is because when you have one fan blowing one way and another fan blowing another, then the fan where the air meets, you have a hot spot where you're not having proper air movement. So in many cases, when I see a number of fans, when customers bring me their machines for repair, I will disconnect what I feel is unnecessary. And in most cases, the customers are greatly impressed with how much quieter the machine is. And once we remove those fans, it looks cleaner. There's less cabling, there's less cable management, and there's less noise. So, and then of course, run the test yourself. If you have multiple fans, like if I had a fan up here blowing air out the top and have a fan here blowing air out the back, disconnect the top one or disconnect the back one, try it, run your own tests and see your temperature differences. As long as you have exhaust air coming out, you don't need it coming out both. If anything, you're splitting your airflow and you're making it less efficient. All right, so let me put this fan on, which means I need these wire hangers right here. And then we're gonna put this on so that it's gonna blow this way, right? So it's gonna go on this way. And then this cable goes to the motherboard. And how do I want to do that? Do I want to go this way or do I want to go that way? Yeah, we'll go this way. This way makes sense. No, it doesn't. We want to go this way. I want that cable to come out in the shortest possible distance to the board for a cleaner cable management. So one of the downsides now of having the heatsink in is doing this part is a little more difficult. I might want to do it right now. What do you mean this part? I mean getting a wire tie on and tying this cable up. Because if I wait to do it after it's installed, it's a tight fit to try and get in there with a zip tie. So what I'm going to do is I'll just put these wire hangers on first, just get that out of the way. Like this. Put another one on the other side. And then we'll grab some nylon zip ties. I have a couple right over here. I was ready for this, see? Now, if you want to, you can put the fan in there and kind of fidget with it. I've done this enough times, I sort of know how I want this to look. So I'm going to just keep it the way it is. And I'm going to just put two nylon zip ties on here. One here. And again, I'm going to keep the cable straight and fold it in on itself so it's not all twisted. It's completely straight because it looks cleaner that way. For a case, by the way, that has no case window, for a customer that would never take the panel off. The only person who's going to see the inside of this computer is me. But if I happen to be working on it and the customer's looking over my shoulder, there's been more than one occasion where a customer went, wow, that looks really nice on the inside. And I take that as a compliment because they've noticed the care I take on something they never even thought about. Now I'm going to cut these little pigtails off. There's one. There's the other. And then we want this wire tie off of here. We don't want any wire ties in a computer because there's wire in them, right? And wires can create shorts. Now I could probably plug this in right now. I want to do this now. Yeah. So this plugs into the white fan header up here that's labeled CPU fan. And it's probably impossible for you to see because it's darn near impossible for me to see, and I'm right in front of it. And then I'm going to just align. There's little cutouts in the heatsink that align with the fan. And I'm going to push the fan in. When I say push it in, I mean push it down towards the bottom of the heatsink. And once I feel like I've got good coverage there, that feels pretty good, then I can grab those hangers and start with the top one, pull it, and it'll just lock in, and then keep holding the fan or it'll swing open like a door because you have all this tension on one side, and pull the hanger down on the opposite side. That's it. That's hooked up, it's installed, it's ready to run. Now we just have to put the RAM in, and the RAM will be super easy. This again is Corsair Vengeance. This is pretty fast RAM, 3200 megahertz. Not a whole lot of benefit to using the faster RAM on an Intel chip, but it was on sale, so certainly does not hurt to have it. Once again, everything you're seeing is live. Nothing has been rehearsed, nothing has been tested. Some people ask me, how often do you get dead on arrival parts? Watch my live videos. How often do you see them? Very, very rarely. The manufacturing process has all been automated for the most part, so machines are doing the exact work with precision, far more precise than a human being, less chance for error. Quality control is automated. And there's so much consolidation on the parts now that we just don't have the number of bad parts we used to have anymore. That's how good manufacturing has become. Now the RAM just happens to be color matched to the board. Again, nothing I did with intention. It doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to see the inside. I do like the Corsair Vengeance RAM. They usually put plastic over the logo, which you can leave on if you want to, but I like to take the plastic off because it just bothers my OCD. RAM only goes in one direction. Doesn't really matter which set of sockets we use. I'm going to use the gray ones. Make sure that the retention levers are all open. Set that down for a minute. Let's make sure all these retention levers are open. The RAM can only fit in one direction. Place it directly in the track. Do not use any force. Make sure that it just slides gently in the track and that the notch in the RAM aligns with the notch in the socket. Once it does so, then push down on one corner and then the other corner. And that's 8 gigs of RAM we just put in right there. Then we're going to skip a slot. I like it when the motherboard manufacturers give you 2 different colors of slots. You use one color, then you use the other color. If the RAM sockets on your motherboard, if they're all the same color, then whatever slot you use, you skip one and use the next one. That's generally the way it goes. And of course, on smaller boards that only have 2 slots and you're installing 2 modules, Pretty easy, right? Or if I was installing 4 modules, then it doesn't really matter because you're going to use all 4 slots. So you don't have to worry about which RAM module goes where. Wherever you plug it in is the right place in those cases. Now, if I don't skip a slot and I put this RAM in the module right next to the other one, I'll still have 16 gigs of RAM, but it won't be running in dual channel mode, which means the performance that I paid for, I won't be getting. And if I'm a first-time builder and the machine turns on and I think, oh, well, it turned on, I must have done everything right. Ignorance is bliss. That's all I got to say about that. All right, last RAM module. That one's going to go right there. There it is. You did hear it click, right? And then I'm going to close all the retention levers so they don't get in the way of anything. You'll see we've got a USB 3 header on this motherboard, which we can't use because the case doesn't support it. Customer doesn't need it. This, I'm going to have to wire tie this SATA cable right up here. And then, of course, I have to run SATA power cable is what I mean. And I have to run a SATA power cable from the DVD drive to a SATA connector on the motherboard for the DVD drive to work, which I'm not worried about right now. And the reason I'm not worried about it right now is I want to make sure what I've done so far works. So I don't want to add any more hardware if something doesn't work. Then it's one more thing I have to diagnose. So let's get this thing some power and let's get it hooked up. See what happens. Oops. I am making a mess. All right. Just put that right over there. That's all good. Okay, let's give it some video. So I got a HDMI cable here we'll use right here. And let's get a keyboard and mouse that we can use here. So I've got a spare wireless keyboard and mouse right here. And we'll test the front USBs by plugging in the wireless dongle for the keyboard and mouse here. And then the last thing you'll see me add is power. Make sure the power supply switch is in the off position just in case there's a short. You turn this, you go to plug it in and sparks fly out. It's unlikely to happen, especially if you're paying attention, but if you made a simple mistake and something's grounding out, especially something attached to the power supply, you want to be safe. So we'll plug that in, we make sure we didn't get any sparks or any issues, and then when we flip the switch on, everything's good. Now, because this is our first power on test, it may take just a minute for everything to initialize. The board has got to recognize what RAM you put in it, what CPU you put in it. You need to be patient waiting for your power on self-test for your BIOS screen to appear. It could take 90 seconds. The machine may even turn off and turn on its own a couple of times. If it takes more than 2 or 3 minutes, something's wrong, shut it down. One of the things I'm going to watch for, I want to make sure this rear fan is turning. I want to make sure this front CPU fan is turning. Anything while you're working on it could interfere with the fans. I like that this fan has a little grate over it. Most fans today do not, and so it's very easy for a cable to fall in and prevent the fan from turning. Just like here, if this one of these power cables were to droop into that fan, then this fan won't turn and we could have an overheating situation or a warning message that the system says, I don't detect a fan and I'm not going to turn on, or I'm not going to go beyond this point. And it's not that the fan's hooked up incorrectly, it could just be a cable, you could have a loose cable that gets jammed in there like that, and now that fan's not going to turn. So I know you're excited to turn your machine on. Take a deep breath. Slow down, double check. Everything's plugged in. Nothing's interfering with the fans. We're ready to hit the power button. So let me turn over to the second camera input. I need to use your monitor. You don't see a monitor here, do you? So I'm going to use your monitor. That means I'm going to hook this computer through this cable right up to 1,150 people's monitors right now. You guys ready? Here we go. Okay, so this no signal, that's coming from the computer input capture card that I'm using. And I'm going to just tell you what, just so I don't confuse you too much, I'll put myself right over here. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit the power button on this Leon Lee case. I think this is like a PC99 model is what it was called. It's been a long time. I'm going to hit the power button. Power light comes on the front. I want to check and make sure my lights are working. CPU fan is turning. Rear case fan is turning. That noise was the DVD drive initializing. Now I'm going to just sit here, hands off, and watch the screen. Here we go. There's our BIOS boot screen, which is what I wanted to see. It's restarting itself on its own. So we're back to the BIOS boot screen again. It's adjusting as it recognizes the hardware we've installed. It's now doing this a third time. It shut itself off. It's coming back on. So it's now booting for a third time. Be patient. Fans are still turning. Yep, it's still doing its thing. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching you. Shutting off a fourth time. Oh, no, here we go. Oh, it's freaking out. It's freaking out. Let it freak. It's good. Now we're in the BIOS and it won't reboot anymore. That's pretty much it. It's all done doing whatever it had to do. And I can use this mouse and I can check and see what version of BIOS we have on this board right now. We're showing we've got version, where is it? I thought it would be in there. It's not in there. System. Here we go. Version F12 is the BIOS version, and that BIOS date is on January of 2019. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type in H370 HD3 BIOS into Google. That's going to take me to Gigabyte's website. The very first link that's offered, I'm going to click on the support section, click on BIOSes, and see if there is a newer version than F12. If there's a F17 for it, let's just say, it's not going to be, let's just say, I don't need to install 13, 14, 15, and 16. You just go to whatever the latest one is. So let's go check that right now. So I'm going to, you guys can't see this, but I'm going to go to Google. Hey, Google. And I'm going to type in H370 HD3 BIOS. The very first link Google offers takes me to gigabyte.com. So I'm going to click on that. And then there's two areas on the support sites. All the motherboard manufacturers do this, where it says support at the top of the site, but it also says support just below by the product. So support near the product is support specifically for that product. The support link above the product is general support for Gigabyte in general. So I'm going to click on the support link that's down below near the product. I'll click on downloads and I'll look under BIOS. And it says the latest BIOS is F14, released June 27th. So that's 2 versions newer. So I don't need F13. I'm going to go right to F14. So I'm going to download that zip file. It's a small download. It's relatively quick. And I'm going to grab my flash drive here. I keep a blank flash drive for just such an occasion. And you'll see I've labeled it BIOS. But there's actually nothing on this. It's just a blank, tiny little 2 gig flash drive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the zip file that I just downloaded from Gigabyte that contains the new BIOS, and I'm going to put it on this flash drive. So give me just a second while I do that. Now, I do have a quick tips video that, again, once again, details all of this. This is a general procedure that runs pretty much for all motherboard manufacturers. Once you've extracted the BIOS file, You can go ahead and remove the flash drive, which I'm going to do right now. And then I'm going to take the flash drive, which now has just one file on it. Don't use a flash drive with a bunch of other stuff. It's only going to make your life miserable. Do yourself a favor, use a blank flash drive so that you can't get the wrong file. There's only one file on here, so you can't screw it up. And I'm going to plug it into the back on any available USB port here in the back of the case. And then sometimes you need to reboot, sometimes you don't. Let's just try it and see. Give it a second to get recognized. And I stalled enough with my talking. I should be able to now go to, let's see. Should be an option here. Maybe it's down here. QFlash, that's what I want. Update BIOS, yes. It does see the flash drive. That's the file I just downloaded. I double click on that file. And it offers me two different ways to update the BIOS. So let me just get rid of myself because I'm in the way. So let me just turn that camera off. Okay, so you'll see there's intact and fast. And you'll see intact is in yellow. That's the default one. That's the one you want to go with. You can either hit enter on your keyboard or you can use your mouse and click on that. And that will begin the update process for updating the BIOS from F12 to F14. Now, this is something that's very painless and safe to do. You just don't want a power outage while this is occurring. You don't want to be playing with the keyboard or the mouse, or you don't want to hit reset. You just don't touch anything, leave it alone, and it will just work. What mode should you partition your flash drive so BIOS will see it? I recommend you use a small flash drive and format it with FAT32. And every computer should see that. More modern, newer computers probably will see NTFS, but you shouldn't need NTFS anyway. The file sizes are too small to require it. And so that's why I use a small flash drive. A small flash drive will default to NTFS anyway. You can always read your documentation from your motherboard manufacturer for that information if you need more detailed information than that. But it always works for me, and I've been doing this for years. It's going to automatically reboot. I'm just going to leave it alone. And let it reboot. So again, the key here is leave it alone. Once again, you can hear the DVD drive initializing because it's an older DVD drive. And you can see the BIOS update was successful. It is then going to go back to the BIOS again in just a moment. So just remain leaving the system alone. Don't touch anything until it's back into the BIOS again, which it just arrived just now back in the BIOS. And now we can verify we're on F14 instead of F12. And in fact, there it is. Now we've got the latest BIOS installed. So what does that mean? What do we do now? The next thing we can do, let's go back to my main camera here. Let's go full screen, Carey. There we go. So the next thing I can do is install Windows 10. Now there's some concern about the date and time and stuff like that. You don't have to do that stuff anymore. This is not 1997 anymore. You don't have to adjust anything in the BIOS if you don't want to. You can leave everything at default. In fact, I'm going to turn the machine off right here, and I'm going to take this flash drive out, and I'm going to erase this BIOS file, making this flash drive empty again. You'll never need it again, unless you're building like 6 of these machines at the same time, in which case you'll need to do this 6 times, right? One time for each board. Then I'm going to grab my flash drive, which has Windows 10 on it, which is right here. Again, I've got another video. It shows you how you can make this completely for free. This puts Windows 10 in a trial mode. All that's legal and free. You just need an activation code if you want to activate it and take full advantage of all the bells, whistles, and features of Windows 10. So I'm going to do this the same way you always see me do it, and that is, by the way, this is a very fast flash drive. This is a SanDisk Extreme Pro USB 3.0 flash drive. 16 gigs, $20. Why is it 3 to 4 times more expensive than any other 16 gig flash drive? Because it's 4 times faster. That's why. And if you're doing this for a living, time is money. So I don't mind spending a little bit of money for a faster flash drive if it means I can get jobs done quicker. So it's blue, meaning USB 3. This board does have USB 3 on the back of it, even though we don't have USB 3 on the case. We do have it on the back of the board. It doesn't do me any good to plug a USB 3 fast flash drive into a USB 2 port. Then I've wasted my money. Now we can turn the machine back on, and it should just, oh, I got to turn the switch back on. It should just automatically boot right into Windows. So let me move you back over to camera to this input. Okay, so we're back to where it says no signal on your screen. I'm going to hit the power button, and I'm not touching anything. My hands are not touching anything. We're just going to let the machine boot. We haven't made any adjustments to the BIOS other than updating it. We're leaving all the default values. In just a moment, you should see the screen come to life, and it's going to look for something to boot to. And we do have that solid state drive installed, but we haven't partitioned, formatted, or installed an operating system on it. So it's got nothing to boot to. Now I don't know what's taking so long. I just saw the system turn off and turn back on again. I'm a little puzzled by that, but I'm going to keep an eye on it here, and hopefully we'll get video in just a moment. In fact, let me turn the other camera back on so you're not so lost at what we're doing here. Let me just minimize this a little bit. And so this should not be taking this long. So what's probably happened is it may not like the USB port. I've seen this, although it's been a while. I may just need to move that flash drive into a different USB port, which should not be a thing. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I'm going to go down here instead. Notice I'm not hooked up on the internet on this because it's still a brand new build and I'm still testing, and I don't want printers or other unnecessary devices plugged in yet until I verified everything's working the way it should be. Make sure my cables are plugged in good. And let's see if we're going to get booted up here. Fans are turning. This fan is turned off and back on again just now. And I'm just going to give it a minute and see if it's going to boot up like it's supposed to before I begin panicking and worrying that something is wrong. I have seen some incompatibilities with some flash drives and some motherboards, and I'm sure you guys have run into that, where you plug a flash drive into a system and it won't start. And I suspect that may be what's happening here. This is very unusual. I should have seen something happen by now. And because nothing is happening, I'm going to shut this back off. Even that's not shutting it off. I'm going to shut it off here at the power supply. I'm going to take the flash drive out and then just turn it on without the flash drive, just to see if adding this flash drive is creating some sort of a conflict. Okay, DVD drive just initialized. So just that one little difference. Now the question gets to be, what's going on here? What's up with that? So don't panic, don't come to any conclusions just yet. We're going to shut it back off. And I'm going to try it one more time. And once again, I'm going to just try a different USB port here just to see if that makes any difference. And it booted almost instantly to the BIOS screen. Now it's going to look for something to boot to, and there's only one thing it can boot to, and that's that flash drive. Nothing else is bootable. And you see that little circle going around? That's the flash drive. That's loading. So let me turn off my camera here so you can see what's going on the screen, although I've shown this many times before. We're going to show it again. Right here, I'm just going to click on Next. If you try hitting Enter on your keyboard, it's not going to work because you're not hitting Enter on Next. You're hitting Enter on Language. See how that's blue? So if you wanted to do this with a keyboard, you'd have to tab over until the Next button was highlighted. Or use your mouse and click Next, then click Install Now. And just wait a second. It's going to say that you have to agree to an end user. Oh, it wants a product key. I never ever enter my product key during a Windows 10 install. I never do it. Right down here it says I don't have a product key. Click on that. And I have to know what version of Windows 10 my product key is going to work with. See, if I put the product key in now, it'll automatically install a version of Windows 10 that is that product key is good for. I just happen to know I'll be putting Windows 10 Pro on here. So I'll select that down and hit Next. Then I get the end user license agreement. So you have to accept that and click Next. I always choose a custom install. Always, always, always choose custom install on a new build. It says, where do you want to install? If you only have one drive plugged in, like let's say you've got 4 drives you're going to be using, don't plug in all 4 drives yet. Only plug in your main drive, so that you can't make a mistake on where you install Windows. This is the only drive available. That's the 512 gig Samsung 970 Pro M.2 SSD NVMe. Yes, that was all English. Just click Next. Now, Windows is going to automatically partition and format that drive and install Windows 10 on it. And I think you're going to find this is a pretty quick installation. And this computer, if you haven't noticed, is completely dead silent. Even though we've got a power supply fan turning, rear case fan turning, and the CPU fan turning, it is completely whisper quiet. And it's only going to get quieter when I put the panel on it. So I know the customer is going to be very happy with that. So while we're waiting for the operating system to install, if anybody's got any questions for me right up to this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Can you update the BIOS after Windows 10 is installed? You can update your BIOS at any point. It's ideal in a perfect world that you would do it prior to your Windows 10 install, because if you're trying to install Windows 10 on a BIOS that has an issue, Windows 10 may not install, resulting in you having to go and get the BIOS. So the reason these BIOS updates come out is to resolve issues. How do you know if you have the issue that the BIOS update resolves? Well, if you get the latest BIOS update, I can guarantee you won't have the issue that BIOS resolves. Why wait for the issue to fix it? So do the BIOS update first. But now that Windows 10 is installed, or when we get it done, if there's a BIOS update in the future, we don't necessarily have to update because everything's working great. But we certainly can if we just want to keep the latest and greatest, and that's fine. But the main concern is being able to install Windows 10 without issues. And if you want to increase the statistical likelihood of not having issues in your Windows 10 install, make sure you have the latest BIOS installed first. This is especially true of brand new systems like AMD's, where BIOS updates can make a big difference with regards to RAM compatibility and can impact your ability to even get the system powering up correctly. So having that latest BIOS update before installing your operating system will greatly increase the likelihood of your success sooner rather than later. What makes one USB port not work and one will boot into Windows? Each USB port is on its own controller, and so there's a limit to how many USB ports, like how many USB 2s you can have and how many USB 3s or 3.1s. They're all on different controllers. So each pair of USB, you notice how have you ever noticed how USB ports are always in 2s? Each pair is on its own controller. And those controllers often have different drivers and are made by different manufacturers, and some are better than others. That's why some USB devices may not be recognized or work properly on some USB ports. It's not as though all the USB ports are all plugging into one control. You need to change that mentality. You've oversimplified the way a computer works. So keep in mind, the reason why your USB ports are in pairs is not a design aesthetic. It is a requirement based on the controller that's being used. And that's why different chipsets allow for more or less USB ports, depending on what the chipset allows with regards to support for those controllers. Okay, so Windows 10 is loading. It's on its first boot here. And I can make myself a little smaller in the corner. Interesting how Gigabyte's got their logo up there while it boots. And I'm just waiting. It's already rebooted on its own here, going for a second boot, as Windows 10 continues to configure itself for the hardware that we have, to customize itself to take advantage of the hardware that we have, which is why we install software but not copy it. It has to customize itself to the unique configuration that is your computer. So we'll just wait while it does that. And it's relatively quick. And then here we've got the region settings, which will have the United States. And then keyboard layout is US. No secondary layout, we'll skip that. I'm going to ignore the internet for right now. And it's, are you sure? Yes. Continue with limited setup is the little fine print. Here, this user is going to be, let's say, Ginger. Hit next, no password. No Cortana. I said no. And if we leave location services on, but we can turn everything else off, it'll automatically set our time zone, our date, our time. That'll all happen automatically once I get plugged into the internet. That's why you don't have to do all that in the BIOS. Windows 10 takes care of everything for you. There are 1,167 people watching. Won't you type in the chat? Let me know where you're watching from. What country are you in, or what city and state? Tell us where you're watching from. And what time is it where you are? Okay, Windows 10 is loaded. And now I'm going to grab an Ethernet cable and plug it in so we can go to Windows Update and grab all the updates. So let me grab that in the meantime, where you guys can let me know where you're watching from. Got my Ethernet cable here. And we'll just plug that in the back. I can unplug the USB install of Windows 10. Done with that. Plug this in here. And then around to the back. Back to the router. There we go. And I'm going to say no to that. And we're going to go to Windows Update. And we're going to grab all the latest updates. And it's also going to set the date and time down on the right corner automatically. You'll see that all happen if you watch closely. And we've got folks watching us from Germany, Philadelphia, Warsaw, Poland, London, New Jersey, Colorado, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, Denmark, Malta, Missouri, Manitoulin Island in Canada. Who else do we have in here? Glasgow, Scotland, Louisiana, Northern Ireland, where it's 11:30 at night, St. Kitts in the Caribbean, or is it the Caribbean? I'm not quite sure. The Netherlands, Tennessee, New Zealand, Richmond, Virginia, North Carolina, Newark, Ohio, Grand Junction, Colorado, Aloha, Finland, Plattsburgh, New York, Bellevue, Washington, Hinesville, Georgia, Bath in the UK, Fort Worth, Texas. Catherine Anna Hauserman watches us from Colombia. And we've got Campinas, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, which I think is Sao Paulo, Brazil. What else we have? Toronto, Canada, Romania, New Mexico, South Carolina, Calgary, Algonac, Michigan, Burbank, California, Ojai in California, Ventura County, Salisbury, UK, Salisbury, North Dakota, Michigan, Pennsylvania again, Jamaica, Bakersfield, California, Peachtree City, Georgia, Frankfurt, Germany, Norway, Serbia, Trinidad, Switzerland, Sweden, Vancouver, Little Rock, Arkansas, Portugal, St. Augustine, Florida, Tukwila, Washington, Laverne, California, Maricopa, Arizona, Mesa, Arizona, Croatia, Belgium, Paris, France, Romania, South Houston in Texas, more from Michigan, more from California, more from Atlanta, Brazil, Sweden again. Welcome in, everybody. It's wonderful to see this worldwide audience of like-minded individuals. We all love tech. What an amazing community we're creating here. We're going to retry those updates that have failed. That's normal. Windows is automatically installing updates. As soon as I plug the Ethernet in, it goes and it starts grabbing updates, because that's how important updates are. Microsoft's not waiting on you to get off your butt to install the updates. They're too important. So when I'm forcing updates and updates are happening in the background automatically, they start to fail because you can't have the same update installed at the same time twice. So when that happens, don't freak out. It's normal. Just hit the retry button. You'll see the list got a lot smaller than it was. And then let it continue as needed, and then it'll want to restart. Ace Scorpion joins us from North Wales in the UK, and Rudiger Luthi in Newport News, Virginia. John Michael is joining us from Gilbert, Arizona. Paul Baddeley is in Scotland. Old Soul Rebel joins us from Bristol in the UK, and Andrew Trevina from Horwich Bolin in the UK. Not quite sure how to pronounce some of these names, so bear with me. I do my best. Sir Drinks a Lot Trench Hugger says he watches us from Slovenia. And Daniel Garcia from Venezuela. Welcome in, everybody. Love, love, love this world community. We can set our government politics aside and we can all just enjoy one another because we all share a very common interest, and that is with the computers that we've grown to rely on. And I applaud you for wanting to learn more about them and to educate yourself to be self-reliant and to be able to take back control of your computer, where you can not have to worry in ignorance over what's happening, that you can see most of the stuff is very simple and basic, and if you exercise the modicum of interest in it, you'll see anybody can do this stuff. Not everybody wants to, but if you want to, it's very easy to learn it. You don't have to have any special education or any special experience. You just have to have the desire, the motivation, and with that, you'll have full control of your computer, which I find to be far more satisfying in the ownership and operation of the machine. I don't wonder, is it going to turn on today? What am I going to do if it doesn't? I kind of look forward to a day when it won't turn on. It gives me something to do, a new challenge. Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen very often. When you build with good quality parts and you build it right, it just generally works reliably for years and years and years. Just avoid clicking on things you shouldn't be clicking on, or email attachments and things like that, to avoid those infections. Keep a good antivirus or anti-malware product running. There's no reason you shouldn't have that computer running flawlessly for many, many years. Matt Brown wants to know if there were any braces for heavy CPU coolers. Not that I'm aware of. Each manufacturer designs their coolers individually, and they design them according to the engineering specifications required by the chip manufacturer for how much pressure and the heat specification, the TDW, TDP, whatever it is. I can't think right now. And so if it meets all those engineering requirements, then the brace is not deemed necessary. Or in some cases, they ignore it, but that's really up to the heatsink manufacturer. You'll see me avoid using very heavy heat sinks because when I'm shipping a computer, they could break off in shipping. So you don't see those big noxious here. If I'm delivering it locally, it's not a problem. But if it's going to be shipped, it's sort of heart-stopping to make sure that, you know, you hear back from the customer that everything arrived okay. It can be a problem. People worry far too much about their computer temperature. And I think the best advice I can give you is stop thinking about the heat of your computer. You're wasting your time and it's not normal. People that own computers don't wonder what temperature they're running at. It's weird. As long as you're running the computer stock and you're not overclocking it, you don't need to go with some overkill cooler that weighs a ton that needs a brace, or that you worry about needs a brace. Your focus on that, to me, is misguided. You should focus on your ability to use the computer. Focus on your skills, whether as a technician or a programmer or a developer, or as a gamer. Play the game, get better at it. Ignore your temps, unless your temps are creating a problem. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and your money solving a problem that doesn't exist, having anxiety over nothing but your imagination based on information that you have been poisoned with on the internet. All right, we can restart this. Carey cured me of thinking about CPU temps. I'm glad to hear that, Solo. Yeah, it's really a disease. People get obsessed about detritus, just completely irrelevant information that has no impact on reality. And it's seriously contagious and infectious and completely pointless. There's nothing to be gained from it. If you're an overclocker, this really isn't the channel for you. We're teaching the basics here. Overclocking is very advanced, and for people that have a lot of time and a lot of money and don't mind burning up hundreds of dollars worth of components in their quest for achieving higher clock speeds, which doesn't make them any better using their computer or being better at their game or being better programmers or developers. It's very much a limited skill that I have yet to see on a resume. I've never seen anybody put on a resume how they're an expert overclocker and what their speeds were. Furthermore, I have yet to see a manager hiring anybody that would even know what that meant. You did what? Yeah, we don't do that here, whatever that is. We work here. We actually get things done that matter. Thanks for coming in. All right, let's go back and check for updates once more. Let's make sure that we repeat this process until no more updates are available. Carey, have you installed the Cooler Master V8 air cooler? No, I have not. The Mugen 5 is very competitively priced. It's very easy to install. I have no reason to go with anybody else. So if the Mugen 5 stops performing or becomes more expensive or it's no longer a value, then I will look at other coolers, but I have no reason to look at other coolers. When I'm very happy with the Mugen 5, on every CPU I've used it on, AMD and Intel alike, it just performs very, very good. So other coolers need not apply at this time. All right, so there was one other update. It installed it. We're good to go there. Now, I've got a little application that I had made by the folks over at D7X Tech, and it's called Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer. And what that does, got it on a flash drive there, what that's going to do is it's going to set a lot of the Windows 10 settings the way I like them to be for optimal performance. It's not about making it look better. It's not about changing the interface. I've had people say, could you change your optimizer to add this or that? No. If what you're asking me to add is something that's a preference, everybody's preference is different. So for that reason, this is just an optimizer. And you can do all this by hand. You don't have to buy this optimizer tool. But the optimizer tool doesn't skip any steps. So I don't have to remember, did I apply that tweak or did I not? Or edit the registry. And it does it very, very quickly, and it ensures consistency with all the machines I build, that they're all configured exactly the same. And somebody said, well, would you sell it? So it is available for sale. It's $10, and the link for it is in the video notes below the video. Here's how it works. I need the right mouse. Go to my flash drive here. That has the utility on it. And I always copy the utility, not that you have to, but I always copy the utility to the desktop before I use it. It's a very small little utility. And we'll double click on it and click yes. All the check boxes will be selected for what applies to your system. It'll automatically uncheck certain items for laptops. And if you've already run it before, but you've done a major update, you can always run it again, and you'll notice some of the check boxes may have changed their status. It's an intelligent utility. You want to make sure you're running the latest version. Right now is 1.3. You can go to options and check for updates to make sure you have the latest update. Now, because it's smart enough to determine which of these settings are not already set, it's intelligent. It's saying everything with the checkbox is not yet been set. All you have to do is hit apply. And then just wait. You're going to see a bunch of access denied on this window that comes up. That's because it's disabling indexing from files that are in use. That's perfectly normal. That's as fast as it is. It's very quick, and it needs to reboot for those changes to take effect. Boom. We've tweaked Windows 10 with all of my preferences for optimization. I love that utility. Like I said, it's $10. There's no product keys. There's no copy protection. Nothing I can do to prevent you from copying it. I'm asking you to support the channel. If you buy the utility, run it on as many computers as you want, but please don't give it away to your friends and stuff. You can use it on your friends' computers, but please don't leave it on there, because that means your friend isn't going to support the channel for that. You know what I mean? So if you want to see me get into a studio, or you want to see me raise to the next level here on YouTube, that comes in through the community. Since I don't have any sponsors, you guys support this channel. So in fact, a big thank you out to Stephen Bernstein, Peter Laycock, Jesse Kirk. These are frequent contributors who've been very generous and have made the ability for me to buy better cameras, better microphones. These are just a few off the top of my head. I'm sorry if I haven't mentioned your name and you're a contributor. These were very recent, so I want to give them shouts out because they're first and foremost on my mind. And I do appreciate all the kindness and support and generosity of the community. And I realize not everybody in the community can afford to give that way, but I've got Amazon links if you're shopping from Amazon anyway. If you buy anything from one of my Amazon links that takes you to Amazon, I make a small commission off of that. If you share my videos, not by downloading them, but by taking the links and posting the links on Twitter and whatever your social media platform is, Reddit, whatever it is, anything that raises awareness that I exist, then if people don't like me, well, I'm a step ahead than where I was before they knew I existed. If they do like me, then they can subscribe, they become a supporter. Community grows, and ideally, maybe someday I get a camera operator full-time, I can get an editor full-time, I can be in a studio, but it all takes money, and that means either going through doing a lot of traditional advertising, removing the educational content value from the channel for at least part of the video to promote a product, or it means you guys support it and we can continue making straight up content that has no bias. The parts you see me install, they're all paid for. None of these parts were given to me for free, and they are parts that I recommend that I use in a professional business where I'm held accountable and responsible for all maintenance and work and repair that has to occur. So I got to be very careful that I don't undersell my customers some cheap stuff and then my customer thinks I'm a horrible technician because they got a system that doesn't work well. So that's how it all works here today anyway. And that's all I needed off that flash drive, so I can eject that now. We're done with that. And I'm done with the utility, so I can just delete that. Now, I really don't have any cable management to do here. Well, just tie this one cable up and get a SATA cable onto this DVD drive. And this system's ready to go back to the office, where again, I'm gonna have to put the remote access software on it because I know they're gonna call. I'm gonna boot up the old machine, just look at what printers are installed and try and do that ahead of time when I drop the machine off. Although Windows 10 will handle a lot of this for us automatically. I need to make sure they're on the right work group so that we can map the drive to the server, that they have permissions for that. And then I know I'm going to get a support call because one of the printers is hooked up directly to this computer that is shared with other people in the office, and they're all going to be pointing to the old computer. So that means I'm going to get the phone call. See, I don't know who's hooked up to the old computer. There's 12 other computers, and I'm not going to sit at all 12 of them to figure it out. I'll wait for them to call me and I'll address it remotely. It's a pretty easy job to do. And those are things I'm anticipating. And then there'll be the support call that I'm not anticipating. So I'm anticipating what I'm not anticipating. There'll be something that I'm not thinking of that they're going to call me about. But I'm certain I'll be able to address it remotely. Oh, something else I can do is install the Samsung software. Let's do that now. Let's make sure we have the latest firmware installed on that flash drive, on the SSD. So we're going to go to Samsung, wrong keyboard, Carey, Samsung.com/Samsung SSD. And again, this is, what? Did I type it wrong? Let me do it again. Samsung.com/Samsung SSD. Did I get it right? Yeah, I got it right that time. Okay. I'm going to go to Tools and Software right here, and then I'm going to go to, my screen is way too small. Bear with me for a second here. Magician Software, we'll download that, save it, and I also want the NVMe driver. We're using Microsoft's NVMe driver, but with Samsung, you can use Samsung's NVMe driver, which is free and optimized for Samsung NVMe drives. And we will download that as well. It's a pretty small download. Save it. We view our downloads. First thing I want to do is put the Samsung Magician installer. Put that software on there first. I can close the browser. Are you a resident of a European country? No. Next. Agree. Next, 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 next. Install. And we'll finish, and it's going to now take a look and see if we have any qualifying products. which it should see the Samsung NV970 Pro. It verifies we have the latest firmware version installed. And it tells us the NVMe driver is Microsoft. So I'm going to change that right now. We're going to put the Samsung NVMe driver on there. So I'm going to close this, go back to our download section right here. There is the non-volatile memory express driver. Double click, click yes, click OK, next, agree to the license agreement, next, install. Once this is done, it's going to want to reboot. So we'll hit finish and allow the system to reboot, and it will disengage the Microsoft NVMe driver, engage the Samsung driver, and start up Windows with the new Samsung driver. So this will just take a moment while that boots up. Now, with regards to hard drive or solid state drive performance, everything's been optimized and tuned. So I can take my utilities flash drive here that I have my optimization tool on. I also have a couple other utilities on here that I like to use. One of them is Crystal Disk Mark. Well, that's just freaky. There is something about that USB port when I plug into it that it does not like. That's a little disconcerting. I'm going to hit reset on this computer and figure out what's going on with that. So just bear with me for a second. We're going to reboot. Maybe. System's running, but I'm not getting video. The video went away as soon as I plugged the flash drive in. So I'm going to cut power on the back of the power supply. Sometimes this can happen if you don't have a good ground. I think we're okay there though, but I'll need to double check it. We're going to boot up one more time. Wow, I'm not getting anything now. I'm going to shut it off one more time, and I'm going to pull power, and then I'm going to hit the power button. I want to drain all the capacitors, make sure we're completely drained of power, and we'll plug this back in, flip the switch back on, turn it on one more time. Let's hope I get some video this time. And that all occurred when I just plugged this flash drive into one of the USB 3 ports, which is a little disconcerting. And these are the kind of weird things you can experience. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. It may be the USB flash drive and the motherboard don't like each other. Maybe there's something wrong with the board. It's too early to tell right now, and I'm not too worried about it yet. This is not a showstopper necessarily. Boy, that does not want to boot up. So I'm going to try one other thing here, and I've seen this happen with these USB card readers. I've stopped installing USB card readers because I have seen them cause problems like this before, and I'm not sure that's what's going on here. In fact, I think I'm going to disconnect the front USB, and I'm going to move this USB back to the back. And I just realized when I unplugged one of these cables here that it wasn't plugged in all the way, and that could have been causing me some grief too. You've got to make sure all your cables are fully seated. The fact that these are already cable managed makes them a little tight, and I can't help but wonder right now if maybe I didn't have it plugged all the way in and it was causing a little short. Don't know for sure yet. Everything is speculation at this point. And you can see I'm not getting any video at all, which is just a little freaky. Oh, I think I know what it was. All right, I'm gonna put this right back in the same USB port. I want to see if it does the same thing again. Okay, it does. And that's right above the HDMI port. And all I did is unplug the HDMI cable and plug it back in. So there's something going on there. So I unplug this, and we plug it back in. Do I lose video again? I lose video. Unplug the HDMI cable, plug it back in, and we're back. That's freaky. I'm not sure what's going on with that. That's a new one. That's all right. No big deal. It could be my HDMI cable. I use them a lot, and I might have a bad cable. Or I just need to double check the grounding straps on the I/O shield. That being said, let's go back to Crystal Disk Mark Portable. Let's put that up here. Always use the portable version of these utilities. You don't want to install them. And let's see what kind of performance numbers we get on Crystal Disk Mark 64. This is a free utility, and you can run it on the rig you're using right now to watch this video to see how your system compares with this one. Keeping in mind about the fastest maximum sequential read speed you can get is about 3600. You cannot go any faster, even with RAID 0. That is just as much data as can fit in that pipe. You cannot put any more data in there unless you get a bigger pipe. That means a different chipset with PCI Express 4.0. AMD is the only one who makes a chipset that is PCI 4.0 as of August 2019. And that's on their X570 chipset. And then you can jump up another 1,000 or so. That doesn't make a big difference. So we've got 3553 on the sequential reads, and it's going to fill all those numbers in on the left, and then it's going to go over to all the right speeds, which will be over on the right side. Did you get it? The right speeds are on the right side. Okay. And while that's running, I'm going to get a flashlight and look into those ports and make sure I don't have a ground strap interfering, causing that weird problem. Yeah, that looks okay. Unplug that. Yeah, that looks okay. I'm going to unplug the video here for a minute. I don't see anything grounding out. Now, when I deliver this to the customer's office, they're going to be plugged in through a VGA cable, so this may not be an issue I have to deal with anyway. Remember what I said earlier, it's a VGA monitor, and the monitor has DVI or VGA inputs only, so HDMI is not even an option. So spending any time fixing a problem that doesn't exist is a waste of time, especially when you're getting paid by the hour, or however you're getting paid for the job, and you've got other jobs waiting. A customer will see no benefit to whatever time you spend fixing a problem they'll never experience. So work smart. Okay, what are my write speeds? Write speed is at 2300. What does the box say the write speed is? That seems a little low for a 970 Pro. Let me see. What does it say? Performance. 5-year warranty on this. Well, they don't give us any numbers. A lot of times they advertise the performance on the box, but not here. Still, 2300 is nothing to sneeze at. I do know that the Samsung 970 Evo Plus has faster write speeds than this. But 2300 on the write speed is probably where it's supposed to be. Make sure the Mugen 5 metal is not hitting the I/O metal. No, they're very far apart. That's not even an option. That's not even possible. All right, but I do appreciate your tips. Is a Western Digital NVMe better than a Samsung NVMe? Remember, you've got to get rid of that closed mind with this idea, is this better than that? It's about what's better for you. These things are not always equal with regards to price, warranty, performance, and rate capability. So there is no one better than another one to all people universally. It just doesn't exist, and you have to have a closed mind to think that way. So please don't have a closed mind, and know that there are different products that exist for different people who have different budgets and different needs. And since I don't know you, your budget, or your needs, I can't tell you which product is best for you. But there is no one best product that fits all people universally. Never has been, never will be. So you're asking a question that is impossible to answer with any accuracy. People can give you their opinions, and it's completely pointless, in my opinion, to take people's opinions. So there, think about that. There's our final numbers for Crystal Disk Mark on the Samsung 970 Pro. Keeping in mind that the bigger the drive, the faster it is. Because this is 512 gigs, if we were to put a 2 terabyte version of this drive in, the write numbers would be faster. The read numbers, maybe not so much, because there's not much higher we can go before the pipe is filled. Like I said, about 3600 is about as fast as you're going to get it. So we're already at 3553. You do reach a point of diminishing returns where a human being can't even tell the difference anymore. You need benchmarking software to tell you. And if you need benchmarking software to tell you if you're happy or not, I would suggest you really take some time to reflect on your life if you don't know if you're happy unless a piece of software tells you you are. That's like Terminator all day long, right? That's like the dystopian future, letting the technology dictate to you how you should feel. I'm not on board with that. I'm not good with it at all. If you're happy with the performance of your computer, a benchmark isn't going to change that. And if a benchmark does change how you feel, you need to reanalyze your relationship with technology. Who's in charge of who here? All right, that looks good. I'm going to close that down. Now, for giggles, if we want to run Prime 95 just to see what sort of temperatures we're going to hit, we can certainly do that. Got some time anyway, so why not? I already know from builds that are very similar to this that I've done in the past that this is going to perform just fine. But some of you may be watching for the very first time, and I'm going to show you how I do this test. Let's do, let's see, let me go full screen on this so I can see. It's just full screen for me, not for you guys. Oops. Here, now I can see. All right, so I want to go with PC testing software. Am I using the wrong mouse? Of course I'm using the wrong mouse. Okay, PC testing software. I'm going to grab Prime 95 26.6 and hardware monitor 1.4. And then I'm going to start hardware monitor first so we can keep an eye on what our temps are right now. And it's going to pull those temps up here in just a moment. There we go. There's all the cores. We've got 6 cores on the CPU. Right now running at 30 degrees centigrade or Celsius, depending on how old you are. And then we'll go to Prime 95. We'll get that started. And click OK. Running all the default values. We can close this window. And we're going to keep an eye over here on the right for our maximum temps. I don't want to see that hit 85 in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to get my timer out, which I should have done first. And we're going to go ahead and let that run for a full 15 minutes. There's no way this customer is going to run this system anywhere close to 20% of what this test is doing. So clearly, if it can go through this for 15 full minutes at 100% on all 6 cores with no overheating issues over, what I would consider over 85 degrees centigrade, customer's never going to get near it. And the system remains quiet, by the way. Pero Matsik says, happy 49th birthday to me. Well, happy birthday, Pero. Aaron says the 512 Pro write speeds are 2300 and the 1 terabyte version is 2700. Well, there you go. Thank you for looking that up. I appreciate that. Bigger flash drives are faster flash drives. Richard Lewis has contributed $1 Canadian. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for supporting the channel. I think I missed a couple of contributions earlier. So let me, oops, wrong mouse again. Let me look at past contributions and give credit to those who are contributing to the channel, making these videos possible. David Starbuck has contributed $2. He says, have a Coke and a smile. Big Lee has contributed $2. Bob the Bomb has contributed £2. Madi Yoel has contributed $5. Jesse Kirk has contributed $5. David Kane has contributed $1. And there was a contribution from Adam Sleeth that was 20 Australian dollars. Madi Yoel contributed $10. And I think I got everything else before that. Another one from Jesse Kirk. Rick Hubbard contributed £3. Thank you, Rick. And so while we're waiting for the test to complete, if anybody's got any questions for me, technical questions, I'll do my best to provide you some answers. We're at about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes on the test. Things start getting hot about 10 minutes in. We'll see what happens here. So if you have any questions for me, this will be the time to ask. Am I using version B of the Mugen 5? Yes, the version B is the only version I've ever used. I've never seen any other version available. So I'm not quite sure where a non-version B is even available for sale, quite frankly. Sid, the Sim channel, has contributed $2 and says, your channel is the bomb. Thank you. Thanks, Sid. Carey, will the motherboard from about 14 years ago fit in a newer case? Yeah, it should. As long as we're dealing with ATX standards, that you're not trying to take a board out of a Dell or an HP or another pre-built machine and stick it into a custom-made machine or vice versa. Sometimes it does work, but I can't tell you, I can't foresee it unless everything's modular. The standards haven't changed in well over 25 years. So yeah, a board from 14 years ago, if in fact it's just 14 years ago, so if it's from 2005, will fit in a case from 2019, yes. Yeah, as long as it's not a pre-built. Should we enable trim in the Magician software? If it's an option to enable, it can't hurt, but trimming occurs through the optimization feature, often referred to as defragmentation. On Windows 10, it changes from defrag to trim. So if you go to defragment the drive and hit the optimize button in Windows 10, it'll actually say trimming instead of defragmenting. And it will automatically do that every 30 days. You don't need to maintain Windows anymore. You don't need to clean up temp files anymore. You don't need to do any of that stuff you used to have to do 10 years ago. Windows 10 takes care of all of it for you. If you want the best running version of Windows 10, leave it alone. That's my advice. The minute you start adding any system utilities, CCleaner, glare utilities, system mechanic, all you're doing is adding problems and overhead. Absolutely unnecessary with a modern Windows 10 operating system. It maintains itself. Finally, Microsoft has gotten there. So these old habits, these things you learned all those years ago, they no longer apply. I'm sorry, we have moved on. Greg McDonald wants to know, does having your screen size change in the middle of a game indicate a bad graphics card driver, a bad graphics card or a driver, or a Windows issue or possible issue with the game itself? Impossible to know. That's absolutely, all of the above is possible. Only through diagnostics and running through different scenarios will you whittle away that problem. It's a unique problem. I've never heard anybody complain about that before. You can certainly go to the game manufacturer's support and ask them if that's a known issue with the game. Make sure you have the latest driver installed and see if you can replicate the problem on somebody else's computer to determine, are they suffering the same problem? Otherwise, you might be trying to fix something you can't fix. If the game runs fine on their system, run it on the same settings on your system. If your system continues that way, you might have a heat issue with your graphics card, or you could have a power delivery problem with your power supply. You could have an operating system issue with the configuration of your operating system. One of the first things you can do to solve any computer problem is to reinstall your operating system fresh and clean, put the drivers on that you need, load your game on, and see if it still operates the same way. If the game no longer has problems, then you've had a software problem. Congratulations, you fixed it. If the game continues to have an issue, then you need to look either at the game manufacturer directly. Again, you can verify with another machine. Does the game still do that? If not, then you have a hardware issue, and I would start with the power supply and the graphics card. So it's a process of elimination. It takes time and money. That's why it doesn't always make sense to fix things yourself. You can take it to a shop that'll have spare power supplies and spare graphics cards, and they can swap that out moments with no investment and tell you exactly what the problem is if they're any good at what they do. Doesn't always make sense to fix your own problems if it means you've got to invest in a bunch of test parts. Should you clean and defrag your registry? Once again, no. Windows 10 automatically does everything for you. You do not have to do any maintenance at all. Just use Windows 10. Stop trying to tweak it. Stop trying to clean it. Stop trying to improve it, because everything you're doing, even if it's not coming back to bite you on the butt now, it will later. Leave it. If you want it to work fast and reliably, leave it alone. Stop going into the registry. Do not use any system utilities. Zero. Don't use uninstallers. Don't use cleaners. Don't use tuners. Don't use anything on your system. The tweak that I do with Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer is all stuff you can do by hand. There's nothing proprietary in my software. I'm not adding any drivers. I'm not doing anything like that. These are small little tune-ups that I require for systems I build. They are not required. They are fully optional, and they can all be done by hand. And in fact, if you go back to some of my older videos before the optimizer was created, you'll see how I did it all by hand, and you can replicate that if it's important to you. Once that's done, you never need to touch Windows 10 configurations again, unless maybe you get one of the big updates, like you went from 1709 to 1903 or something. You may need to do those same tweaks. Microsoft may reset them. But apart from that, I strongly advise you, stay away from all system utilities, stay away from any maintenance programs. Windows 10 has that all built in, and if you just leave it alone, it takes care of itself. I think one of the biggest difficulties I have as a technician is dealing with people who don't understand how quickly technology evolves, and they take things that they've learned years ago and they ask how they do it today. You don't do it today. You don't defragment a hard drive today, or at least a solid state drive. You're not going to do it. We don't do that anymore. And in fact, the reason why we used to do it doesn't really apply much today, even with a mechanical drive. There's no performance increase as a result of defragmenting. Just doesn't happen anymore. The file system and the hard drives are so fast these days, you will not, as a human being, notice any difference. One benefit of defragmentation is to make file recovery more possible. If the mechanical drive fails, it's easier to recover contiguous data. But that being said, that's it. For the most part, there's no benefit to it. Back in the day when we used to recommend multiple partitions, it had to do with cluster size with FAT32, FAT16, and other file allocation table operating file systems that just weren't optimal. Now with NTFS, it's a non-existent issue, and people who still insist on separating data from programs with partitions, their mind is poisoned from old, obsolete information. So let them do it if they want to do it. That's up to them, but it's completely unnecessary. It's a complete waste of time. And the reasons why we did it back then no longer exist today.
Same is true, like I mentioned, of defragmenting. The same is true of system utilities, registry cleaners. None of that needs to happen anymore. Welcome to 2019. Make yourself comfortable, relax. Windows now takes care of itself, if you let it. The minute you try and override Windows' ability to take care of itself, you're the one who's going to have the problems, not me. So you can blame yourself. If you want to avoid the problems and you want a reliable machine, leave it alone. We're at 11 minutes on the test here, 11 and a half minutes. And let's see, what is my highest temperature here? I can't see. 61, that's it? 62? That's fantastic. On almost 12 minutes, I'm real happy with that. Telma wants to know what's the best browser for me. For me, because I use YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google, and Google creates Chrome. So if I want the smoothest experience while I am streaming on YouTube and in the chat room with YouTube, obviously using the browser made by the manufacturer who makes the website is going to perform most reliably and most optimally. That being said, it really doesn't matter to me if you use Opera or Firefox or Edge. I really don't care. I'm sort of forced into Chrome for the best experience with Google products. If YouTube was owned by Microsoft, I would probably be using Edge because it would work better. That's just the way the world works. Companies optimize their software to work with their software. That's sort of the way it works. Not that other browsers won't work with YouTube, but they don't work as well as Chrome does with YouTube. So because of that, because I do so much of YouTube, I don't need to have other browsers. I don't need Firefox because Chrome does everything I need it to do. I don't need Opera. I don't need Edge. I don't need it. So if I wasn't using YouTube, I'd probably just use Edge. There's no reason to add a third-party browser when I've already got one that does the job. Edge does a fine job. There's no reason to switch it out. But again, because I'm using YouTube and I'm doing it so often, it's in my best interest for the smoothest experience to use the browser made by the folks who make YouTube. Will the temperatures be the same once the computer is closed? Yes, or they should be actually be better. If we have proper airflow, the temperature should go down. Right now, there's no controlling the airflow with the case open. When the case is closed, it forces airflow in through the front and out through the back, and that should improve the temperatures. Again, this obsession with temps is unhealthy, and I strongly advise you to put your mind into education that actually of stuff that really matters in the real world. This is not one of those things. When you're solving a heat problem, that's a job. When you're preventing a heat problem, that's a disease. That's an infection. It's a mindset that is, in my opinion, unhealthy, unproductive, and doesn't do you any good in reality. So that's my advice on that. And we have just crossed the 15-minute mark, and where am I on my temps? 62 is still max. I'm gonna let this go another 2 minutes because I have found that Prime 95 kicks into some different tests right up to about the 17-minute mark. And I wanna see just how hot this thing can get. I'm hitting 63 right now. That's a far cry from 85. And the system is dead quiet. I wanna keep emphasizing that because you could put extreme cooling on and, you know, not be able to have a conversation with a normal tone of voice. Because your fans are so loud. I said your fans are loud. 64 degrees centigrade, just under 16 minutes. Probably a little over 16 minutes since I started the timer late, but that's okay. I'm going to let it go another 60 seconds here. Those are unbelievably cool temps. If those temps right now were 84, if they were 20 degrees hotter, there'd still be no problem to fix. The CPU isn't going to run any less of a lifetime. You know, you're not degrading it at all. It's not going to run any faster or any more reliably. And chasing down any cooler temperatures when it's already running in spec results in zero benefit. Zero benefit. So it's just not a healthy mental state of mind to be obsessed with something that doesn't matter. All right, we're at 16 minutes and 44 seconds and still 65 is our max. We're well below, 20 degrees well below what I would still consider to be perfectly fine. If we were to hit 85, 86, I start to get a little worried, but that's within the first 15 minutes. We've already exceeded 17 minutes on this test, and the highest temp we've seen is 66. That is absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to stop the Prime 95 test and watch how fast it cools down. Watch these temps right here on the left side. Here we go. Boom. See how quick a CPU can heat up and cool down. And of course, we knew that was going to run easy. You know, we knew that was going to be fine because we've done this enough times. With this cooler and this chip, we know it runs really well. You'd be hard pressed to find a liquid cooler that performed better than that under normal operation. You'd have to really overclock the chip hard to need a liquid cooler. And if you're doing that, once again, nobody's paying you for that. That's something a hobbyist or an enthusiast does. In the real world, where if you work as a tech, nobody's paying you for that. So keep that in mind. There's a difference between what people do at home and what people do at work. And if you want to make money, it's in work. I'm just saying. If you want to spend money, that's for the home. All right, guys. If you have any questions for me, this will be the time to ask because I'm going to wrap this up. We are at 4:20. You know what that means. Almost time to wrap it up. All right, guys. Last chance for any questions. I'll be happy to answer for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and shut the machine down. And then we'll go back to full screen camera 1. I think. Full screen camera 1. Going to do that for me? OBS? Thank you. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, you can let me know. Not by hitting subscribe. Well, you could certainly subscribe. That's not what I meant to do. You can hit the thumbs up right below the video. Click on that. That lets me know you want to see more videos like this. If you want to be alerted anytime I go live, or you want to be alerted anytime a new video content is posted, you want to be one of the first to see it, be sure and hit that subscribe button. That's what that's for. And hit the bell icon. That turns the notifications on. Make sure that you are using an active email address. You know, some people created their YouTube account years ago, and they've completely forgotten whatever email address they set up with it. If necessary, create a different YouTube account. Get yourself a free Gmail address, associate your YouTube account with the Gmail, and if you want to, you can forward all of that Gmail to whatever email address you're using so that you will get those notifications. Usually when people aren't getting the notifications, it's because they didn't click the bell icon or they're not using Gmail. Once again, Gmail is owned by Google. Google owns YouTube. Google has created Chrome. So if you want the best experience possible, with regards to receiving those notifications, if you're having any problems with that, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and verify that you've got a Gmail account associated with your YouTube account. If you don't, it's free to create one. It's no big deal. If you are getting your notifications, everything's working fine. There's nothing to fix. So that's just for the people who aren't getting notifications. You have misconfigured something, or you've got an email service that's seeing that stuff as junk or spam, and you want to make sure to avoid that by utilizing Gmail, because Gmail will not mark that as spam. And then, like I said, you can forward all of your Gmail email to any email service you use, and you never have to use it again. And then you'll get your notifications. Thank you all for all the kind comments and support in the chat room. I appreciate that very much. And what do we have, about 900 people watching live? Ian McLeod says, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank this community for being great. Absolutely, I agree. And Jimmy's looking at me like, what do you want, boy? What is it? What is it, boy? Huh? It's not time for dinner yet. It isn't. You got a half an hour yet. It is not time. Is there brains in there? Is there brains in there? Oh, here comes Lyle. Oh. What do you want, Lyle? It's not time yet, boy. It's not time for your dinner yet. You're a good boy, though. You're a good boy. Even if your brain's hollow, your head is, oh. Don't grab my microphone. You want to talk? What do you want to say? What? Is that so? All right. And there's the other one, just looking at me. He's just looking at me like, hello? Can I help you? You want to say hello? No? Nothing? Look at that face. You're so pathetic. That works too, doesn't it? Look how fat you're getting. Yeah, that's what I thought. He's like, fat sounds great. It's not time yet. You're too early. Your clock is off by a half an hour. Good boys. All right, doggos, say hello. And they appreciate your support. Aaron Burris has contributed $5. He says, have a drink on me, Carey. Thank you, Aaron. Ed says, thanks for the Saturday afternoon treat. Well, right on. Thanks for joining me today. Everybody wants a cookie. I know, but they just can't have one because they're getting fat. Ed says his notifications have started working again. It's always good to know. Stealth Mode says, thank you. Love your shows. Thank you. Carey, do you have a DOCSIS 3.1 modem? Yes, I have to have one. What else? Can you help me with this error code? I cannot help you with the error code, but there are people who can. If you go to techguy.org, that's techguy.org, you will find a free support community. And they can answer any questions you have for any operating system or any hardware. I can't believe this. Is the system off? Oh, I was going to say, it's so quiet. It's off. Okay, what else we got? Just looking for any last opportunity to answer any comments or questions in the chat room before I say goodnight. I will not be live tomorrow, I can tell you that for sure. Monday, I don't know yet. I should hopefully be back live on Monday. Sometimes what ends up happening is I have plans to go live, and then a customer calls with a problem or there's an issue, and they have to take priority. And then I've got another build just waiting in the wings, which I hope to start Tuesday. Heavy Sonic says he likes my shirt. Thank you. But what does Charlie Sheen think? Does Charlie Sheen approve? The dogs want their own YouTube channel. I'm sure they do. David Starbuck has contributed $5. He says, it's cookie time. Not yet. Not yet. No, it's too close to their dinner time. We got a half an hour. They're going to have dinner. But thank you, guys. Well, we got to get the dogs some more cookies. They've almost eaten all of the ones they have. Lyle is obese. Well, Lyle's not obese. He's a lot of hair. You know, when you get him wet, he's actually about this big. But he's a little heavy. So I'm just trying to watch that a little bit there. Especially as he gets older and his hips and his knees, you know, with dogs, those kind of get to be a problem as they get older. If the dog is also gaining weight, that's not helping. So they do get glucosamine to help with their joints. James Allen has contributed $10. Thanks, James. Thank you very much. Do I use night mode on my computer? I do not. David Register has contributed $1. Thank you, David. So once again, I'll give a shout out to everybody who's contributed during today's show. And that would be David Register, James Allen, David Starbuck, Aaron Burris, Sid the Sims Channel, Madi Yoel, Richard Lewis, David Starbuck, Lee Bigley, Bob the Bomb, Jesse Kirk, David Kane, Adam Sleeth, Fabricated Ego, I guess is what that says. Kathleen Burgess, Curtis Brown, Michael Martin, Rick Hubbard, Sharon Idle, Bill Headblingy, Peter C., Fred Stewart, Christoph Esch, Thomas Beckenstow, Michael Dane, Gary Tatum, Stephen Sheik, Andrew Johnson, Jan Giddings, Peter Dunstall, and Steve Burnett. Oh, and the first contribution from Chester Hughes. Thanks, you guys, for supporting the channel. And am I almost done with Madi's computer? Yeah, that'll ship out tomorrow. But I want to get you guys a little video of what it looks like, all buttoned up and pretty. That'll be the last step, and then it'll go out. In fact, the two computers, the last two giveaways we did for the veterans, those have finally been finished. I got the battery in for the laptop. There were a bunch of updates. They still had the old version of Windows 10, so they had to be upgraded to 1903. So those get shipped out on Monday. I still have that X299 that's going to go out to Tony Wallow. That I don't think will ship out Monday, but I got to get it out next week. And then there's this system build that's going back Sunday night. And the other system build I got next week. And then the upgrade. I also have to get that upgrade of that Aurora R6 finalized and hopefully get that out Monday. I have a lot of shipping to do, and that's going to prevent me from making a video. That's why I'm not sure if I'll be available on Monday or not yet. And the people at FedEx are going to hate me when they see how many computers I'm bringing to them. Past Me has contributed €5. Thank you for that. Would you overclock a machine if a customer asked you to? No, because I don't have any sort of warranty and time to diagnose and repair. Costs me money. So if the customer wants to pay me $100 an hour to overclock their computer, and every time they call with a problem, it'll be $100 an hour, then we can talk about it. But I really have other things to do. Even at $100 an hour, it's not worth it to me if that customer's taking too much time when I've got other customers waiting over some stupid nonsense like overclocking. It absolutely, in 90% of the cases, overclocking is a complete waste of time. If you can get 10 or 15% more out of your processor, it still doesn't make you any more productive in most cases, nor does it make you a better gamer. It doesn't do anything. So overclocking is really a hobbyist activity. And if you want to encounter, if you want to do that, then you take all the risk and you take all the time, and you can run your benchmarks to have this imaginary accomplishment. For the rest of us, we have work to do. We have things to accomplish that matter. Back when overclocking could achieve 200 or 300% gain in your processor speed, that was worth doing. To get 10 or 15%, in my opinion, is a complete waste of time. If you just wait a few months, there'll be a processor 10 or 15% faster. Go buy that. It'll cost you less, and it'll work faster and more reliably than any overclock. But no matter how fast they make a processor, there's somebody out there going, you got to make it faster. If they had a processor out there today that ran at 1,000,000 megahertz, there'd be some moron on the internet going, I can overclock it to 1,000,001. Who cares? It's a point of diminishing returns. You're a human being. These processors are already so fast. The slowest point of a computer today is you. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. There are some people that do some kind of heavy video rendering and video editing where, or photo editing, that increasing the clock speed could increase their productivity. But getting it there, you know, the investment you've got to make financially and in time and testing will probably eat up most of whatever you're getting back. It'll take a while for you to recover your investment on that. But those people do exist, but they're not asking me for advice. They already know. There's no telling them because they already know everything. So let them do it. If you don't have that reason, then you're just following in somebody's footsteps, going somewhere you don't want to be anyway. So it doesn't really apply to you. But if you wish to explore that, that is something you explore individually on your own. It is a hobbyist activity. Brad Henderson has contributed $10. Thank you, Brad. And again, that's a big, big difference between hobbyists and real working technicians. Real working technicians do not get paid to overclock computers in corporate America. We do not install liquid coolers. We do not install RGB lighting. This is not how we pay our bills. This is not what our employers expect from us. If you walked into your bank and your bank said, I'm sorry, the system's down, I can't accept any money or give you any money, and then you find out the reason they can't is because their tech overclocked their computers and now they don't work, and now they have to wait for the tech to come back to fix it, or the liquid cooling system is leaking, you're going to be upset and you're probably going to go to a different bank and never give that bank your business again. When it comes to business, people are impatient. They expect good customer service. They expect to be helped in a timely and professional manner. And if they don't, they're encouraged to take their business to your competitors. When you're sitting at home with money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to play with RGB lighting, liquid coolers, and overclocking, that is not what a real paid technician does in corporate America. And it's not to say it's good or it's bad, but there's thousands of YouTube channels created by and hosted by enthusiasts and hobbyists. Be aware that if you want to do this for a living, if you're serious about it, that's all a waste of knowledge. It's not going to benefit you whatsoever in the real world, working corporate world. So that's what I'm trying to do differently here on my channel. But if you're interested in that stuff, you can pretty much go to almost any other YouTube tech channel and get that kind of nonsense. To me, it's nonsense because there's no money in it. A million megahertz is 1,000 gigahertz. Yeah, but 1,000 gigahertz is what, a terahertz? Or is it a really hertz? Brad says, have a Coke on me, Carey. I'm a big fan here in Cali. Right on, Brad. Thank you. Sid says he likes watching the hobbyists blow up their computers. I have seen, Facebook groups where people talk about how they overclock their $800 graphics card and 6 months later it's smoked. And I'm like, so here's how this conversation goes. If you would have just left the video card alone, like a grandmother would have, it would still be working today. But because you tried to make it better, grandma's card is faster than yours. So, job done. And they talk to me like, well, you're just old and you don't get it. Well, if by old you mean I know what the value of $1 is and what the value of time is, then yes, I'm old. Because I don't have the time or the money to waste. Congratulations. I'm glad that your life has so much time and money available in it. I wish I could be more like you. In the meantime, I'm not, and I have to work like the rest of the losers, and I have to earn a living. And there is no way I'm going to drop multiple hundreds of dollars on a graphics card and then smoke it and go, oh well, all in the name of performance. Because to me, a graphics card that doesn't work doesn't have good performance. I will take the tortoise over the hare any day. Give me that steady, reliable performance that I can count on versus something that ran really fast for a little while until I killed it. then which one's faster. So over the course of time, forget about today, over the course of time, who's got better performance? The guy who overclocks and who occasionally runs into blue screens, or the guy who never overclocks, never blue screens? The guy who never blue screens has better performance, because the time it takes to reboot, to recreate whatever work you lost when it happened, or whatever it was that you were in the middle of doing when it blue screened, is negative performance. It's the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve with overclocking. So when the overclocking is running stable and you're happy with it, it's great. But even to get it to that point requires a certain investment in time and money that could be better spent, in my opinion, on better hardware that doesn't need overclocking. So as a hobbyist activity, it's great, but that's not what I do here. I'm not a hobbyist channel. This is a real working channel, real working tech. There are a handful of them on YouTube. Overclocking and videos on liquid cooling and all that other nonsense, they're everywhere because they don't have regular corporate jobs. This is what they think is normal. So they don't know any better. That's fine. I'm not saying it's bad, but if you're trying to find meat at a vegan market, you're in the wrong place. Doesn't mean eating meat is bad. You just can't find it at that market. You're in the wrong place if that's what you're looking for. Once people realize that you're being milked by the marketing companies and the manufacturers who design this nonsense, you should be so offended by how stupid they're treating you and the fact that you're going right along with it. Like, to me, it doesn't sit well with me. When I see the hype and the marketing put behind some of this hobbyist stuff, I just see it from a different set of eyes. I just think, wow, they're really exploiting and taking advantage of people who don't know any better. And they're going to continue to do it as long as they can. That's the capitalist way. Me, I can't do that to people. I can't sell them stuff that doesn't matter. But maybe that's why I'm not rich. Too honest. I'm not a good capitalist. Shame on me. Mike Britton has contributed $5. He says, greetings from God's waiting room. Love what you do. Keep on keeping on. Right on, Mike. Thank you for that. Once again, I want to remind you, we are having a meet and greet in Grand Rapids, Michigan, September 20th through the 22nd. That's going to be at the Holiday Inn, the Airport Holiday Inn is what it's called, in Grand Rapids. And it's an event called Techcon Unplugged. Check it out at techconunplugged.com. And it's really intended to be by technicians and for technicians to grow and expand your business. Everything from marketing to tools and things and ideas on how to expand your business and services you can provide and how to provide them by others similar to you. People that started off on their own and have grown their business and explain to you how they did it. There'll be a number of podcasters there. Mike Smith from the Mike Tech Show will be there. Jeff Hallish, Paco LeBron, Marvin B. from Podnuts will be there. Matthew Rodella will be there. And there'll be lots of other folks there in the podcasting community, where if you've been listening to these podcasts, you get to meet them face to face. I will be there, and I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you out there. We'll even do sort of a meet and greet. If people don't want to attend the conference, but they just want to do a meet and greet, we'll work something out where, meet in the hotel lobby or something, just if you want to come by and say hello, and you don't want to attend the event. That's fine. I'm more than happy to meet folks who want to meet up and obviously won't have a lot of time for that, but certainly we can get a how do you do in there. For folks that attend the event, we'll be sharing dinners together. We'll have a lot more time together than just a basic how do you do. So this is one of the advantages of going, but hopefully you're going not just for the meet and greet, but for the valuable information being offered by other techs and business owners who have done everything on their own, and they're going to share with you how they did it to give you ideas and inspiration so you can continue to grow and be successful in pursuing your own business as a computer technician. So once again, the link to that is in the video notes below the video. All the parts that were used in today's video are also linked in the video notes below the video. My thanks to all my friends in blue for keeping it civil in the chat room today. We had a couple of trolls, but it's not too bad. And of course, for all the contributions that have come in, thank you so much for supporting the channel. That's going to wrap it up for me today. I've just got to hook that SATA cable up on that DVD drive there and change the work group name, and it'll pretty much be ready for me to take back to the office. Again, pretty major upgrade and relatively very simple. And you got to see firsthand how it's done with parts unboxed, tape cut, everything brand new. You can get an idea of what to expect when you're unboxing the products with regards to how they're packaged and what their reliability is. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you guys again for everybody who's joined in today's broadcast. I appreciate you very much. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.